that they find to be concerning, to check in with the source of election information and facts, which is your local election official and your state election official, to go watch, to observe the process. Elections happen in your local community. So on election day, each neighborhood, each community has a polling place where you can go and actually watch the process unfold. You can go watch them double check during canvass. And so, I really would encourage people that are feeling skeptical about the process. I know how important this is. I mean, this is.
All right, I'm ready, Regina. Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. Look, all of you hardworking Americans, we finally made it to the end of the week. My name is Rain Augustine, and you are watching News Now from Fox. Now, if you aren't familiar, we are a nonstop stream of breaking news, live events, and stories taking place from around the country. So today we're expecting a few live events. We should hear from Speaker Nancy Pelosi today from the Capitol Dome. We're also expecting to hear from the latest from Governor John Bel Edwards in Louisiana as the state is still responding to COVID-19. And of course, Louisiana has had a very hard hurricane season. So we will bring you the updates from that. And I mean, this is the beauty of News Now from Fox. This is what we have on the schedule, but as you know, live events and breaking news happens all the time. So as this all unfolds, we will bring it to you live, raw, and for the most part, unedited. But right now, some exciting news happening in Florida. NASA and SpaceX are preparing for a launch. So our sister station in Los Angeles spoke with a female astronaut on what it's all about. So we're going to take a look at that. Again, my name is Rain Augustine, and you're watching News Now from Fox.
In the world, talk about 10, 60 hours, 21 minutes. And Dr. Whitson has spent 665 days in space. SpaceX and NASA are gearing up for a historic astronaut launch and voyage to the International Space Station. And joining us now to talk about the mission and her perspective is astronaut Dr. Peggy Whitson. Good morning, Dr. Whitson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, no, it's very exciting. I'm happy to share the experiences, and I think this Saturday is going to be a lot of fun for all of us to watch, being the first real operational space flight of a commercial vehicle. We did a test flight earlier this year, but this is going to be the big one. 4 crew will be going up on board the space station to join the 3 that are already up there.
How important is this mission?
I think it's really important. I think we're on a precipice of change in how spaceflight is going to occur. I think including commercial agencies or commercial, in addition to space agencies and international partners, is going to really open up the possibilities for future exploration, future utilization of space. I think we have done some really interesting research on board the space station. I think people are going to be able to start actually taking advantage of that and utilizing space as a platform for business. So it'll be fun to see the changes that occur.
Oh, yeah. We are all so looking forward to watching it this weekend. And you grew up on a farm and dreamed of being an astronaut. So when did it change from, I guess, being a dream to a goal?
That's a great question. When I graduated from high school was the year they picked the first female astronauts. And I think for me, seeing some other female astronauts was important. But also, there were 2 medical doctors and 1 biochemist, and I was interested in biology and chemistry. I already knew that. And so it seems to me like, well, hey, this might mesh, and I really could become an astronaut. I still had to apply for over 10 years after I got my PhD before I was successful in becoming an astronaut. Wow. But I learned a lot along the way that gave me the capabilities to become the leader I did, being the first female commander on board the station and first female chief of the astronaut office. Things like that were, part of that 10-year wait period, but it was all part of that process to become an astronaut.
And what an incredible success story that you have, too, because you said that becoming the first female and non-military chief of the astronaut office was most meaningful. So explain why.
Well, I think it was meaningful to me because, number one, I never really expected it. But I always advise young people today, whoever's, they're asking me for my advice, my success advice, and it's to challenge yourself to do something that's not easy, something that challenges you. You might fail, but you're going to learn from it. And you're going to find out really how high you can go, because if you limit yourself, that's as far as you'll go. So you have to challenge yourself to see what you can do, because it's going to be so much more than you might imagine.
Oh, I could just imagine, too. And, we see the pictures that are taken from space. And can you tell us what it's like for you when you're in space and looking out the window and just seeing everything? What was it like for you? And do you believe that there is life out there?
Yes, I believe there's life out there. But I'll tell you why. Part of it has to do with the fact that, seeing the planet from above, you get this incredible perspective of, this is all of humanity, at least as far as we know, that lives in this one place. And when you're trying to build a spaceship, a huge spaceship in orbit, you get some appreciation for what's all in that spaceship called planet Earth. The temperature control, the oxygen provided, the CO2 removed, all of those little pieces that are nothing we have to think about here on Earth for the most part. It's easily, very difficult to replicate in space in order for us to survive. But that perspective of how important our planet is, but then to look out and see the stars and see how small we are. There's thousands and thousands of stars, and that's just our galaxy. And there are billions of other galaxies.
Wow.
Billions and billions. And it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, there has to be life just by sheer number.
I can't wrap my mind around it, but thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and I want to talk and ask you so many more questions, but thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Whitson, and sharing your experience and being such a successful woman and a role model to all of us as well.
All right, well, looking forward to seeing you, and we'll share a lot more stories on Saturday.
Looking forward to that. Thanks again.
We're taking a live look now at the White House. And guys, we're still paying very close attention to the Senate races, with a spotlight on Georgia as control of the Senate comes down to just 2 runoff elections in January. This means that Democrats must win both of Georgia's runoff elections to make a 50-50 split in the Senate, in which Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would be the tie-breaking vote, giving her party a razor-thin, guys, majority in the chamber. Also, keep in mind that the Senate is the only place left where Republicans could remain some type of legislative control. So stay with us. We'll be sure to bring you all the latest on that. Switching gears now, we're going to bring you all to Texas, where a lieutenant governor is offering $1 million for anyone who can provide proof of voter fraud in the states. You're watching News Now from Fox.
About 24 hours hours ago. How many tips have you gotten, and what qualifies as a credible tip in your mind?
First of all, thanks for having me on, Sally. So what I did is style this after a program that everyone's familiar with, Crime Stoppers. And under Crime Stoppers, they offer rewards for tips that lead to an arrest and a conviction. And then that's when they are paid. That eliminates a lot of the frivolous tips. And these are serious people that would follow up. So we don't receive the tips, especially from all over the country. I have a good sized staff, but not one that large. So we ask people to call local law enforcement or maybe their state's attorney general if they have information. And what we found through Crime Stoppers, Sally, while everyone you would like to think would, pass on a tip if they saw a crime committed, sometimes, obviously, Crime Stoppers has been so successful that you need to incentivize some. So I'm not receiving the tips. We had a few calls right away as soon as we announced this a few days ago, but it would go to local law enforcement and the attorney general. So I would not be aware of what is happening now at that level because they have to be investigated very quickly, obviously, with time running out. So I will know after the fact, or I'll know once we see a case possibly move forward. But the whole issue here, Sally, is this. The Democrats in Milwaukee and Detroit and Philadelphia and Atlanta brought this on themselves. They brought it on themselves by basically counting in the dark. In Detroit, they put poster board on windows so you couldn't see in. In Philadelphia, Republicans had to stand 50 yards away or more. And even at 6 yards, they couldn't see what was going on. So it just led to suspicion. Why would anyone not want you to see what they are counting? And then I find it very curious, not you, Sally, but some mainstream media around the country. Well, we don't need to recount. Why is everyone afraid? Look, if I'm Joe Biden who wants to bring the country together when almost half didn't vote for him, I would be saying, yeah, let's recount. I mean, that's why we get a bank statement every month to make sure.
Go
ahead.
Right. Let me jump in there, Lieutenant Governor. No Republican or Democratic election official that I know of has come forward yet saying that they have proof of widespread systemic voter fraud. Have you seen any evidence where it would affect thousands of votes? There's always going to be handfuls of votes here and there that were cast illegally. That's in every election. But have you seen any proof that would actually change the outcome of any of these states?
No, Sally. I have not. I have not seen it. I'm offering a reward for people who have seen it and report it and leads to a conviction. And Sally, it's become kind of a media line that, well, there's nothing going on. The RNC and the White House have received thousands of tips. There have been hundreds of affidavits signed under the threat of perjury by people who say something happened. I don't know if it's enough to overturn an election, but why does everyone not want to get the actual count? Even if it doesn't overturn the election, don't we want an actual count? And Sally, here's the big thing that many people are not understanding. In normal elections, when you do a recount, yeah, it's a couple of hundred votes, depending on how many votes were cast. But that's because in the past, only 5 to 10% of ballots were mail-in. Mail-in is where fraud happens. I know personally, because I carried the photo ID bill in the Texas Senate with some other senators years ago, and the Democrats stood on the floor and said, "We don't need a photograph. We don't need an ID to go vote. We don't have any problems at the ballot box."
Lieutenant Governor, we only have a few seconds left. Let me ask you this: down ballot, Republicans did really well. Would you support pursuing fraud on the GOP side of things as well?
Of course. Again, if I'm Joe Biden and I want to unify the country, I would be saying, let them count. Let them count. And Sally, again, there have been a lot of cases and a lot of affidavits have been signed. Again, I don't know, but don't we want the accurate count? And by the way, in almost every of these swing states, just enough votes were found to overcome whatever lead the president had at a certain point. So why don't we want at least the right count? That's what we should want. And Joe Biden should want that. Look, Trump went through 4 years of them saying the Russians interfered, and it dogged him for 4 years. Turned out to be nothing. And there may not be enough votes to overturn a state. But Sally, we're talking about almost in every one of these swing states, less than 1% out of 6 million. And say in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, for example, Sally, real quick, Last election, 266,000 had mailed their ballots in. This time it's over 2 million. Trust me, there are mistakes that happen.
Okay,
Maybe the other way, but why? I asked a question.
Lieutenant Governor, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate you coming on Houston's Morning Show to let us know about this reward you're offering, and
Sure.
please come back and update us on what you learn as states continue to compile all of this data. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sally, and we'll stay on top of it. Thank you.
There you have it. That was the latest out of Houston, Texas, where the Lieutenant Governor is offering $1 million for anyone who could provide some type of proof when it comes to voter fraud. Staying on the subject, we're going to check in with NewsNOW from Fox's Daytona Everett, as she did a recent interview surrounding all of the legal troubles that are facing this election. You're watching NewsNOW from Fox, and some of you will see a quick break.
I'm Daytona Everett. You're watching News Now from Fox. I am joined by Jessica Levinson. She is an election law professor at Loyola Law School. Jessica, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it's been an interesting election cycle. We want to focus right now on these lawsuits that are going on. What is the latest?
So the latest is that there's a couple of different lawsuits throughout the country, not surprisingly, in the states that are most competitive. The most legal action really is in Pennsylvania right now. There are two different types of lawsuits in Pennsylvania, one dealing with the late arriving ballots and another dealing with kind of a fairness argument about people who voted by mail versus people who voted in person. But we're seeing a lot of different litigation. I expect that it will kind of die down in about 2 weeks or so.
And we're seeing this in several states. Have there been other states that have been knocked down recently as well?
Yeah, so we've seen the kind of typical post-election litigation in places like Georgia and Wisconsin, where frankly, we see this a lot in every type of every presidential election where you ask for a recount. And that's kind of the more normal type of election. And then we've seen in places like Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, there have been allegations that there's voter fraud or that there's a problem with the integrity of the electoral systems. And then, of course, back to Pennsylvania, where there's been a lot of fighting about these ballots that are arriving late, and then fighting about whether or not people have meaningful access to watch the people who are counting the votes, and then also fighting about elections boards that essentially have told people who got their ballots in early, you can cure those ballots. And there, the legal question is, was that fair to the people who got their ballots in later?
Now, what's interesting, throughout COVID, we've been really getting to know our officials. Right now, it's hard to keep track who is handling each lawsuit state by state. Can you kind of dive a little deeper into that, into who is really the ones that are doing these investigations and working on them?
Yeah, well, it depends on who's being sued. Some of these cases are in federal court, and then President Trump's team obviously is suing based on a federal criminal or a federal legal violation. And then some of them are in state court. In terms of who's doing the investigation, I mean, it's such a good question, because when it comes to election law in America, we don't have one election law. We don't even have 50 different election laws for each state. We have this kind of crazy patchwork where it's not just state by state, but sometimes it's county by county. And that's part of where we're seeing the litigation. And that's because under the US Constitution, it says states, you determine the time, place, and manner of elections. And that's why we have this patchwork. And then states get to determine kind of county by county what's going on. So, you know, in terms of who's handling this, sometimes there's a county elections board that's involved, or a county registrar. Sometimes it's a legislature. Sometimes we have the state courts involved. It really, I hate to give you such a lawyer answer, but it depends on who's doing the suing and who's being sued and for what.
Focusing specifically on Georgia and Pennsylvania, because those look like those are going to be the two states where lawsuits do move forward. Who are handling those?
Yeah, so in Georgia, it's really the Secretary of State, and that really is going to be based on a recount. And then in Pennsylvania, there's two different flavors of lawsuits. And with respect to the late arriving ballots, we're also looking at the Secretary of State and the county boards who have to segregate those ballots. And then with respect to, the counting of, or the ability to cure those ballots that arrived early, again, it's County Board of Elections in conjunction with the Secretary of State.
Yeah. What do you see as the future for these lawsuits?
I don't see that these lawsuits will be moving forward. So many people have said, are we going to have another Bush versus Gore situation? Are we going to have the lawsuits go back up to the Supreme Court? And could that determine the outcome of the election? I think the answer is no, for a couple of reasons. One, you need for that kind of this perfect storm of everything comes down to one state, and then there's a suit in that state that affects enough ballots to flip the state. That's not currently what we're seeing here. We're not even seeing that in 2 states that might become outcome determinative. And then if you look at the allegations that are being put forward, I think that there's a reason that the Trump legal team has had, I think as of this morning, about a 0 to 12 loss to win ratio here. I don't see that there's a lot of legal merit to these suits, and I think that's why they're probably not going to keep going forward.
Jessica, I have to bring it up because we're located out here in Phoenix, Arizona. We had a thing called Sharpiegate hit Twitter and go pretty viral. This is a conspiracy that was going on in Arizona elections, that if you filled out a ballot with a Sharpie, it wasn't going to count. Have you heard of anything like this in previous elections, and what were your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are that it's really unfortunate because everybody should feel safe going to the polls, and that if they use a pen that works, we shouldn't have this campaign of disinformation about, can you feel comfortable that your ballot will be counted? It's unfortunate for everybody. It's something that just transgresses partisan affiliation. Have we seen this before? Yeah, increasingly we do see these kind of conspiracy theories or lies about, oh, if you use a black pen, then the ballot machine isn't going to read your ballot. Or, if you signed your ballot envelope this way, then you're going to have a problem. And it's just hard because it's so hard for people to have faith in our elections, for people to feel that they want to take part in the process. And then when there's this disinformation out there, it's just really unfortunate.
What have you found particularly interesting in this 2020 election? I'm curious.
So what's been particularly interesting, so many things, but we did have to ramp up really quickly to vote by mail. And it was interesting to watch so many states and so many county registrars go from one system, which was predominantly in person, to basically allowing at least 2 different types of systems, one vote by mail and another in person. I think that that's probably going to be the wave of the future as more and more people are comfortable voting by mail. One of the things that was interesting following this election cycle is how people reacted to disinformation, what the purpose of that information is, how we're getting our information so much more, of course, online, how big tech companies are reacting to that, and how the law is so far back and not even close to addressing, if it should even address, the potential issues involved with the campaigns of disinformation and misinformation.
So do you have a message for the public right now after the election?
Message for the public right now is the one thing that was like a huge pleasant surprise is we didn't have an election administration meltdown. We didn't have a circuit breaker go out in a big district. We didn't have a cyber attack on ballot machines. We didn't have some sort of big meltdown that we were worried about. And I really hope people feel comfortable with the integrity of our election systems. For in almost every place, there's a way to track your ballot to make sure that it was counted. And I hope that at the end of this, people not only come back to vote in 2 years, but become engaged citizens. We just ask too little of people when we say the only thing you need to do to be civically engaged is to vote every 2 and 4 years.
Interesting. So final question for you, Jessica. What do you see as the finish line? What date for Americans to say, hey, here are our elected officials, this is it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So what we're looking at least on the presidential level, is a couple of different dates. December 8th, there's something called the safe harbor deadline. And that under federal law is when states are supposed to have resolved all of their electoral disputes. 6 days later, December 14th, the Electoral College actually meets and votes. Then the state governors transmit those votes to Congress. January 6th, Congress says we've got them. We certify those results. Noon on January 20th, I expect that there to be an inauguration. And then a similar but different process when it comes to the Senate and the House of Representatives. But that's basically the timeline we're looking at here.
Yeah. Could there be pushback on that though?
Absolutely. I've learned, if there's one thing I've learned in 2020, you never say never. There could be pushback. You know, we certainly hope it's better for the country if you can adhere to the federal laws that provide that timeline for a reason, to say if you're going to have disputes, resolve the disputes by a certain time, have time to vote, give Congress time to certify, and then, you know, let the process play out. You don't want emergency briefs being filed with the Supreme Court at the last hour. That's not good for the country.
If President Trump refuses to concede, is that what would happen?
No, any president, not just President Trump, but any presidential candidate who says, I'm not conceding, it's the same as saying I won. It has no legal effect. So under the Constitution, under federal law, you don't have to concede. There's no legal consequence that happens as a result of failure to concede. The question would be, and we certainly, one of the things we're proud of in this country is peaceful transfer of power. The question would be, you know, if President Trump says, I'm not leaving, and if you get into a situation where the Secret Service says, sir, we need to escort you out. And I think everybody hopes that you don't have that happen in America.
All great information right there. And also you can learn more on your podcast too, right?
I have a podcast called Passing Judgment. Thank you. And we talk about a lot of these issues. It's a podcast about politics and the law, and we've had no shortage of information lately.
Same with us here in the newsroom. Love that. Alrighty, Jessica Levinson out there from Loyola Law School. Thank you so much for your expertise.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was News Now from Fox's Daytona Everett, bringing us the latest information when it comes to all of the legal issues surrounding those battleground states in the presidential election. Although Joe Biden has been named president-elect, Donald Trump has not conceded. Trump's legal team filed lawsuits only 6 hours after the election was called. In a statement from the Trump campaign, cited concern about lack of transparency and improper ballot harvesting. Now, these claims were presented with no evidence, but that's not stopping President-elect Joe Biden from putting together his administration. The White House is preparing for a smooth presidential transition. However, some questions are being raised regarding Biden's chief of staff pick. Apparently, an old tweet by his pick is raising some eyebrows. So let's check in with Fox 13 in Tampa. Their team is taking a look at why it's all coming back to haunt him and what it's all really all about. You're watching News Now from Fox, and my name is Rain Augustine.
Biden is continuing to build his White House team, and he just tapped one of his longtime aides, Ron Klain, to serve as chief of staff. But as soon as that announcement was made, President Trump's supporters were quick to point out an old tweet Klain posted in which he said elections are rigged. Our political editor, Craig Patrick, here now to explain the controversy. Craig?
Hi there, Cynthia. Yet Klain's tweet from 2014 is being taken a bit out of context. He did not claim that elections are being illegally rigged, but he was referring to a process and a system in which politicians manipulate the map to favor incumbents in one particular party or the other. And in that sense, to that point, politicians across the aisle note that, in fact, the map, the political map, is being manipulated here in Florida and across the nation. In 2014, Vox tweeted a report noting 68% of Americans think elections are rigged. And at the time, Ron Klain, now President-elect Biden's chief of staff, replied, because they are. Well, President Trump's son and others are highlighting that tweet as they claim without credible evidence the 2020 presidential election was rigged. But in 2014, Klain was not referring to allegations of voting fraud. He was criticizing the legal process that politicians use to draw their local districts that does manipulate the map and favors incumbents and one party or the other. Now that all goes back more than 200 years to a man named Elbridge Gerry. To reward his party, he signed a law to redraw the political districts of Massachusetts. And one of those districts was so rigged and squirmy, critics said it looked like a salamander and mockingly called it a gerrymander. And the pronunciation later morphed into gerrymander. It came to describe the way politicians stack their districts with voters from one party or the other to keep their districts safe. And both parties escalated the gerrymandering of districts the past 20 years as we polarized as a nation. As we moved through the Clinton sex scandal and President Bush's unpopular war in Iraq, both parties lost one of their wings and pulled harder to the right and harder to the left. And as that happened, each party began to dominate different regions of the country, which gave them more power to draw their state's election maps and manipulate congressional districts to their advantage, escalating the gerrymandering, or what Vox called the rigging of districts. In that context, Ron Klain's tweet from 2014 is right in line with what politicians from both parties have been saying for years. Here's former Florida Democratic Senator Bill Nelson.
What has changed over the years is the gerrymandering of congressional districts so that you have a predetermined outcome before the November election. You know who's going to win.
And here's former Republican Congressman David Jolly, who now has no party affiliation, on how polarization accelerated gerrymandering, which accelerates the polarization and hostility in politics.
It is in part because we have a closed primary system and we have gerrymandered districts to protect incumbents on Republican and Democratic sides, which for 20 years has led Republicans and Democrats to realize their path to getting reelected is to cater only to their base and to speak down to the other side, because otherwise they'll be primaried for not being a good enough Republican or Democrat.
And Klain's tweet on this goes back to 2014, but it is strikingly timely now because after the census, what happens next? We enter another phase of redistricting where both parties and incumbents will likely try to continue to gerrymander districts to favor themselves. This is going to be an explosive issue, I would say not just next year, but in the couple of years yet to come, likely with litigation. You have the state of Florida that has a Fair Districts Amendment that has countered this somewhat, but only to a certain extent, and it took a great deal of litigation, Cynthia, to get us where we are.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge issue, and one that I think until we talked about it today, not a lot of people are even aware of. So what are the courts saying about this? Is there anything legally that could be done?
No, because the highest court in the land took this up in June of last year, and it was Chief Justice Roberts who noted that the districts may be unjustly drawn, but noted the courts have no role in enforcing or changing the way those districts are drawn. So therefore, the U.S. Supreme Court just last year basically said they have no role to play in this, which takes us right back to some states like Florida that have amendments, others that have an independent commission. Most states, though, leave the process to partisans on both sides of the aisle.
Wow. Got a ways to go on that for sure then. Thank you so much, Craig.
All right, guys. Now, the question that everyone is asking, will the Supreme Court kill the Affordable Care Act? Now, after Supreme Court justices heard oral arguments earlier this week, it does seem a little less likely. But what does it all mean in terms of challenges towards the Constitution and when it comes to health care? Let's check in with our sister station in Chicago to find out.
Will the Supreme Court kill the Affordable Care Act? It appears less likely after justices heard oral arguments on this case by phone this week. So what are the challenges to the Constitution and what does this mean for health care? To help us break this all down is legal analyst Karen Conti. Good morning to you, Karen. Good to see you as always.
Good morning.
Okay, let's just get to the very basics of this. What is the gist of this argument that this should be stricken down?
Well, the Affordable Care Act had what we call a mandate, and the mandate means that there's a penalty if you don't get insurance. And that was the basis for which the law was upheld many years ago in that controversial decision. So the Congress took away that penalty. So the argument was now that they don't have that penalty, because that was the basis for upholding the law, now that the law should be stricken down. And the other side of that is that you can sever it, meaning if there's 10 parts to a law and one part is unconstitutional, you can throw away that one part and keep the rest of it. So that was the key question for the judges, whether or not you could sever this one provision.
Okay, so obviously we don't know how the justices are going to rule, but they seem to have given a strong indication that they would actually uphold this in oral arguments that we heard. So tell us what you know about what's been said, because there's no guarantee that the oral arguments are really going to say what the final decision is, right?
That's right, because when the Supreme Court judges question the lawyers, they play devil's advocate sometimes. So they don't always say what they think. They try to maybe get the other side to answer or give the other arguments so that when they convene and they discuss this amongst themselves, they have all the arguments at their fingertips. But in this case, both Roberts and Kavanaugh said very definite statements saying, this is severability. Our precedent says this can be severed. And it seemed like to me they were definitive statements, not questions. And if you go to ussupremecourt.gov, you can listen to those arguments yourself. They're not as exciting as you might think, but I think if you listen to the tone of their voices, it seems to me that they were saying, we are going to uphold this law.
So realistically, when do you think we'll see an opinion? And there's been a lot of talk about a surprise that Kavanaugh and Roberts would rule against killing this. A lot of people saying, well, maybe they're not as conservative as we thought.
Well, about 2 or 3 months is the normal time, unless there is a dispute among the justices, and then it could be longer. My guess it's going to be a little bit quicker than 2 to 3 months, because my guess is they want to get this done. They've probably done their research already before the oral arguments. We're going to see something very soon. The issue of whether they're conservative, I think they're still conservative. I think they were following the law. I think they looked at the precedent, and they're not looking at the outcome here. They're not saying one way or the other, I like this actor, I don't like this actor, I like Obama, or I don't like Donald Trump. What they're saying is the law says we can sever the law. And if the Congress wanted to strike down the law, let the Congress do it, because we're not doing it. We are a court. So I think this bodes well for the court, because I think they're doing the right thing.
So do you think this gives us any insight into how they might rule on election issues that might reach the court? Because a lot of people are concerned now, because it is a much more conservative court, that it is going to have an impact on what we're dealing now with these election issues, if it even makes it to them.
I think that it probably on the side of they're going to look at the law. They're going to not legislate. They're going to say if the states did their thing, if the states abided by their own laws, we're not going to step in here. We're not going to be political and step in. You do it yourself. If there's a constitutional issue, we will deal with it. So I think it probably goes on the side of leaving the states to their own devices when it comes to elections.
Okay, Karen Conti, our legal analyst. Always great to see you. Thanks for joining me this morning, Karen. Have a great day.
You too.
As you can see, legal experts say that they are hopeful that the Affordable Care Act, which is also known as Obamacare, will be upheld. However, we will not have a final decision until sometime next year. Of course, we also know that all eyes are on newly minted Justice Amy Coney Barrett as to what her opinion will be. Staying on this topic now, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris recently addressed the nation when it comes to the Affordable Care Act challenge. So let's listen into what they have to say, and some of you will see a quick break right here on NewsNOW from Fox, and my name is Rain Augustine. So let's listen in.
Good afternoon. Today, the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that could strike down the Affordable Care Act in its entirety. If the Supreme Court agrees with the opponents of the act, their decision could take health care away from 20 million Americans. It could take away protections from more than 100 million people with pre-existing conditions in our country, and hurt the millions of Americans who have come to rely on the Affordable Care Act. Getting rid of the Affordable Care Act will take us backward to a time when people could charge a woman more for her health care than they could charge a man, simply because she's a woman, to a time when pregnancy could be considered a pre-existing condition. It will take away free birth control and contraceptive coverage for women. This is all happening at a moment when our country is suffering through a pandemic that has claimed more than 238,000 lives. And we all know that if the Affordable Care Act is struck down, communities of color would be hit particularly hard: Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native American, because they are at a greater risk of pre-existing conditions, from asthma to diabetes to lupus. And they are also 3 times as likely to contract COVID-19 and twice as likely to die as others. Now, I know we all know that we just had an election in America. An election where healthcare was very much on the ballot. Our country had a clear choice in this election. Each and every vote for Joe Biden was a statement that healthcare in America should be a right and not a privilege. Each and every vote for Joe Biden was a vote to protect and expand the Affordable Care Act, not to tear it away in the midst of a global pandemic. And Joe Biden won the election decisively, with more votes than have ever been cast in American history. It amounts to 75 million voices and counting, calling on the Supreme Court to see this case for what it is, a blatant attempt to overturn the will of the people. And the President-elect and I cannot let that happen. And now it is my honor to introduce President-elect Joe Biden.
Thank you, Kamala. Good afternoon, everyone. This morning, as was stated, the United States Supreme Court heard oral arguments on the case of grave importance to the American people. This case represents the latest attempt by the far-right ideologues to do what they've been repeatedly failed to do for a long time. In the courts, in the Congress, in the court of public opinion, over the last decade, to eliminate the entirety of the Affordable Care Act. Twice already, the Supreme Court has upheld the landmark law, in 2012 and again in 2015. And the Congress, expressing the popular will of the American people on a bipartisan basis, has rejected numerous attempts, numerous efforts by President Trump to erase the law as well. Now, in the middle of a deadly pandemic that has infected more than 10 million Americans, nearly 1 in every 32 Americans, often with devastating consequences to their health. These ideologues are once again trying to strip health coverage away from the American people. The goal of the outgoing administration is clear from the brief they filed in the Supreme Court. It asserts, and I quote, "The entire ACA thus must fall," end of quote. Now, I'm not naive about the fact that health care is an issue that has divided Americans in the past. But the truth is, the American people are more united on this issue today than they are divided. Recently, as last month, a leading survey found that American people want to keep the Affordable Care Act in place by an overwhelming margin of 58% to 36%. 79% of the American people, including 9 out of 10 Democrats, 8 out of 10 independents, and 2/3 of Republicans, want to keep the ACA protections for people with pre-existing conditions, which would be eliminated if this lawsuit were to succeed. This doesn't need to be a partisan issue. It's a human issue. It affects every single American family. We can't subvert the growing consensus of the American people based on an argument put forward in the briefs seeking to invalidate the law that even many conservative legal scholars, including in the National Review, consider to be, quote, ridiculous. Let's be absolutely clear about what's at stake. The consequences of the Trump administration's argument are not academic or an abstraction. For many Americans, they are a matter of life and death in a literal sense. This argument will determine whether health care coverage of more than 20 million Americans who acquired under the Affordable Care Act will be ripped away in the middle of the nation's worst pandemic in a century. Over 100 million people, as the Vice President-elect pointed out, over 100 million people with pre-existing conditions like asthma, diabetes, cancer, could once again be denied coverage, whether complications from COVID-19 like lung scarring and heart damage will be the next flood of pre-existing conditions that can be used as an excuse to jack up premiums or deny coverage altogether. For millions of survivors who have struggled, won, and fought the coronavirus, fought against the loss of their life. This argument is going to determine whether women, as is pointed out, will once again be charged higher premiums just because they're women, or seniors will see their prescription drug costs go up. And like kids who, whether or not they can stay on their parents' plans till age 26, whether annual lifetime benefits will be reimposed. So someone could walk in and say, die in peace, run out of your coverage. This isn't hyperbole, it's real. As real as it gets. When a family is faced with the awful news of a child's diagnosis with leukemia, or a mom forced to battle against breast cancer, an accident that leaves loved ones unable to live the life they've always known, it stops your heart. It stops your heart. It wrenches your entire world right off its axis when that happens. And many of you know that from your own personal experiences. Believe me, I know the feeling, and many American families do as well. In that moment, the very last thing on your mind, the very last thing should be on your mind, is whether you can afford the treatment. Affordable Care Act was created to put a stop to that inhumanity. It was created to ensure that families thrust into their worst nightmare of their lives could focus not on money, but on the fight that really matters. Obamacare is a law that every American should be proud of. It's why people with pre-existing conditions are protected in this country. It's a law that delivered vital coverage, as I said before, for 20 million Americans who did not have coverage. It's a law that reduced prescription drug price costs for nearly 12 million seniors. It's a law that saved lives and spared countless families from financial ruin. So this effort to bypass the will of the American people, the verdict of the courts in the past, the judgments of Congress, in my view, is simply cruel and needlessly divisive. Regardless of the outcome of this case, I promise you this, beginning on January 20th, the Vice President-elect Harris and I, we're going to do everything in our power to ease the burden of health care on you and your families. I promise you that. As I said, I will protect your health care like as my own family. And we've been, unfortunately, significant consumers of health care. That starts by building on the Affordable Care Act, with the dramatic expansion of health care coverage and bold steps to lower health care costs. My transition team will soon be starting its work to flesh out the details so that we can hit the ground running, tackling costs, increasing access, lowering the price of prescription drugs. Families are reeling right now, particularly the reporters in this room and others listening. You've interviewed a lot of these people around the country as you've gone all over the world, all over the country. Enduring illnesses, faced with risky choices, losing their employer plans in droves. Already 10 million have already lost their employer plans. They need a lifeline, and they need it now. They should have to hold their breath. They shouldn't be in that position, waiting to see if the Supreme Court is going to wrench away the peace of mind they've come to now rely on. So we're going to get right to work, I promise you, addressing the issues that families are talking about around their kitchen tables this morning, making sure that they can get in bed tonight with the peace of mind that they deserve, and fulfilling a moral obligation to ensure that here in America, health care is a right for all, not a privilege for a few. So come January, we're going to work quickly with the Congress to dramatically ramp up health care protections, get Americans universal coverage, lower health care costs as soon as humanly possible. That's the promise I make to you. We're going to fight for your family's health coverage the same way we fight for our own family's health coverage. We want every single American to know, if you're sick, if you're struggling, if you're worried about how you're going to get through the day, we will not abandon you. That is a promise. We'll not leave you to face these challenges alone. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together. And we're going to build a healthcare system that puts you and your families first and that every American can be proud of. I want to thank you all for listening. May God bless you. May God keep you safe in this COVID environment, and may God protect our troops. Now I'm told that we're going to have, we're going to take 5 questions. Is there about? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the campaign, you said you were not naive about how difficult it would be to unite the country. It's now 3 days after you were projected as the president-elect. The president himself says he has won this election. His own administration has not moved forward to give you access to what you need to do to begin the work of your transition. Just a few minutes ago, the Secretary of State, when asked if he would cooperate with a smooth transition, he said there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. I wonder if you have a message for the president who may well be watching right now, and how do you expect to be able to work with Republicans when so many have thus far refused to even acknowledge your victory?
Well, first of all, we are already beginning the transition. We're well underway. And the ability for the administration in any way by failure to recognize this our win does not change the dynamic at all what we're able to do. We've announced yesterday, as you know, the health group that we put together today. We're going to be moving along in a consistent manner, putting together our administration, the White House, and reviewing who we're going to pick for the cabinet positions. And nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that the fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
You have a response to Secretary Pompeo, and I also wonder, you warned during the campaign that as the walls closed in on the president, he would behave more erratically. Yesterday, he fired his defense secretary on Twitter. Are you worried that he's disabling the government? And what are you saying to the world leaders who are calling you at this point about the situation here?
Well, first of all, I'm letting them know that America's back. We're going to be back in the game. It's not American alone. Number one, I've had the opportunity to speak with now 6 world leaders. And the response has been very fulsome, energetic, and they're all looking forward to being able to, from Great Britain to France, to Germany, to Canada, et cetera, and Ireland. So I feel good about the ability to. I said when we announced that the next president is going to inherit a divided country and a world in disarray. The reception and welcome we've gotten around the world from our allies and our friends has been real. I have a number of other calls to return, and so I feel confident that we're going to be able to put America back in the place of respect that it had before.
Mr. President-elect, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has suggested today that he may not recognize the outcome of this election until the Electoral College meets next month. Have you spoken to your longtime friend in the Senate, Mr. McConnell, and what do you make of his specific comments over the last 24 hours?
I haven't had a chance to speak to Mitch. My expectation is that I will do that in the not too distant future. I think that the whole Republican Party has been put in a position, with a few notable exceptions, of being mildly intimidated by the sitting president. But there's only one president at a time. He's president. We're going to have the Electoral College. We'll be making their judgment in December. It'll be announced in early January. But in the meantime, I hope to get a chance to speak to Mitch.
If I could follow up, without transition funding, will you be able to go through with the proper transition that's needed? Would you like access to the PDB, and will you authorize legal action, or would that be too divisive, do you believe?
We can get through without the funding. We're in a position that we feel very good about. There's nothing that slows up our efforts to put things together. Obviously, the PDB would be useful, but it's not necessary. I'm not the president now. And so we don't see anything that's slowing us down, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect, and congratulations to you both. Have you tried to reach out at all to the president? And if he is watching right now, what would you say to him?
Mr. President, look forward to speaking with you.
And you say that you are being able to move ahead without interruption, but to Jeff's point, presumably at some point you will need access to more classified information, secure facilities and the like. What options are you considering? How will you move ahead if the president continues to refuse to concede? Well,
look, access to classified information is useful, but I'm not in a position to make any decisions on those issues anyway. There's one, as I said, one president at a time, and he will be president until January 20th. It would be nice to have it, but it's not critical. And we're just going to proceed the way we have. We're going to do exactly what we'd be doing if he had conceded and said we've won, which we have. And so there's nothing really changing.
But not ruling out legal action?
No, I don't see a need for legal action, quite frankly. I think the legal action is, you're seeing it play out, the acts he's taking. And so far, there is no evidence of any of the assertions made by the President or Secretary of State Pompeo. Secretary of State Pompeo.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. Democrats are on track to lose a handful of seats in the House of Representatives. That could make it harder to pass legislation with just Democratic votes. And I'm just curious, how does that impact your plans for what priorities you think you can get through this Congress, especially if the Senate remains in GOP control? And during the lame duck, will you be coordinating with Speaker Pelosi on how she should be negotiating with Republicans?
Well, I've spoken to the leader, and I've spoken to the minority leader in the House. And one of the urgent things that need to be done is people need relief right now. Right now. Small businesses, people who are about to be evicted from their homes because they can't pay their mortgage, unemployment insurance. You know, what's going to happen is you're going to see what people don't realize is the failure to provide state and local assistance. You're going to see police officers, firefighters, first responders laid off. And I think the pressure is going to build. But the fact is that I would hope that the president at least has the sensitivity and knowledge to know that a lot of people are in real trouble right now, between now and the time we get elected, till we get sworn in. And so it's my hope and expectation. I'm sure that the majority, the Speaker of the House, as well as the minority leader, are working right now on the priorities they have laid out.
But do you plan to be active in those negotiations, working with Speaker Pelosi to represent Democrats on the table?
Well, we've been talking, and they know my views, and I support what they're doing.
And then my second question was about the Senate. Do you plan to campaign in Georgia before your inauguration to help Democrats in the 2 runoff races there as they try to flip the Senate? And how important is a Democratic-held Senate to your agenda?
Well, obviously, it'd be much better if we had a tie in the Senate, which means that this Vice President become incredibly important beyond what she already is. But we're going to do anything we can that they think we can do to help.
And does the Democratic Senate help your cabinet chances? Does that change how you consider who you nominate to cabinet posts?
No, I don't think so. I take McConnell at his word. I understand he said that he will make it clear who he's prepared to support and not support, and that's a negotiation that I'm sure we'll have. Look, one of the things that I would do as president-elect and when I become president is lay out to the Republicans as well as the Democrats who we intend to name for each cabinet position. I hope we're able to be in a position to let people know, at least a couple, that we want before Thanksgiving, and we'll just work this out. Look, I am not a pessimist, as you know, and I think there are enough Republicans who've already spoken out, but I think there'll be many more, not many more, there'll be a larger number once the election is declared and I'm sworn in, to be able to get things done. I think they understand. For example, I can't imagine there not being a willingness on the part of Republicans. There's going to be significant pressure to deal with health care. Their own constituencies are in that position. So I'm not, I think we can get a lot done.
Thank you.
Sir, what do you say to the Americans that are anxious over the fact that President Trump has yet to concede and what that might mean for the country?
Well, I just think it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. The only thing that, how can I say this tactfully? I think it will not help the president's legacy. I think that I know from my discussions with foreign leaders thus far that they are hopeful that the United States democratic institutions are viewed once again as being strong and enduring. And but I think at the end of the day, you know, it's all going to come to fruition on January 20th. And between now and then, my hope and expectation is that the American people do understand that there has been a transition. Even among Republicans who are people who voted for the president. I understand the sense of loss, I get that. But I think the majority of the people who voted for the president, a lot voted for him, a significantly smaller number, but a lot voted for him. I think they understand that we have to come together. I think they're ready to unite, and I believe we can pull the country out of this bitter politics that we've seen for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
And just to follow up on a previous question, how do you expect to work with Republicans if they won't even acknowledge you as president-elect?
They will. They will. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Good morning. You're watching News Now from Fox. My name is Pilar Arias. I'm going to say hello in just a few moments, but right now I'm going to take you out to Georgia. Thanks to our sister station, Fox 5 in Atlanta. There is a reporter on standby for a live report. Actually, it looks like he might have already concluded or he's getting ready. So as soon as that happens, I'll bring it to you right here on News Now from Fox. But again, I hope you guys are having a great day so far. Thanks so much for being here. And I actually want to show you as well, we've got some counting updates as well. So again, we're going to listen in here. Actually, this reporter might be ready to go. Again, you're watching News Now from Fox. Happy Friday. My name is Pilar Arias. We're going to bring you this update here on News Now from Fox.
Miller Park in Cobb County. This is the location where Cobb is processing its nearly 400,000 ballots, all of which have to be hand evaluated to determine who these folks were voting for in the presidential race. Now, what you're looking at are these teams. They're working in two. They pull out the ballot, they take a look at it, determine which candidate the person had supported, who they voted for, and then they put that ballot in a corresponding bin. Those ballots will later be counted and then uploaded into the state's database to determine exactly what the count was here in Cobb County. Now, this is technically an audit, not a recount, but in effect it works as a recount because whatever they end up determining will be the ultimate count from Cobb County and obviously for all of Georgia. They have been told by the Secretary of State's office that they have until 11:59 Wednesday night to get things done here in Cobb and the other counties throughout the state. The folks in Cobb say they're confident they'll make that deadline.
Again, everybody, that was an update from our sister station, Fox 5 Atlanta, there in Cobb County, Georgia. The recount update. We will continue to follow that for you right here on News Now from Fox. Meanwhile, again, my name is Pilar Arias. I'm preparing to say hello to you all here in just a second. And happy Friday. Hello, happy Friday. Thanks again so much for watching. We're going to stay on top of all things election related for you here. The Trump legal team continuing to file lawsuits in different states across the country. But I do want to let you know that some of you are going to see a very quick commercial break. And for the rest of you, we are on standby for an update from NASA. We've got two very important launches here coming up very soon, tonight and tomorrow. The Space Coast here, Port Canaveral, Florida. So again, we are on standby for that. It looks like we actually have it right now. So I'm going to take you there live on NewsNOW from Fox. Again, my name is Pilar Arias. Thank you so much for watching.
Is both safe and successful. The FAA's job in this mission and in commercial space generally is to protect public safety, property, and national security. And we have the right skills and the right workforce and the right team to get this done. We've actually been doing it for many years, but this is our first manned orbital space flight. So we're really excited and really privileged to be able to participate here today. In calendar year 2020, the FAA has licensed 31 space operations thus far. In fact, we set a record in the month of October with 6 in 1 month. And we expect to license 56 more space operations, so just about one a week in 2021. So really an exciting time in aerospace in the United States. In and of themselves, these numbers are very impressive, but they really are just the tip of the iceberg about what's to come. Once space tourism turns the corner, we think we'll see likely topping 100 operations a year. So we are prepared for that. These operations are going to be a huge part of the new space economy, which some estimates say could be worth $1 trillion by the year 2040. And it's my job, under the leadership of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, to make sure that the U.S. is a doorway, not a barrier, to this innovation. We recently finalized the Streamline Launch and Recovery Licensing Requirements Rule. The new rule will allow space launch operators to use a single license for multiple launches from multiple launch sites. It strips out very prescriptive requirements and injects flexible performance-based criteria. We told this industry we'd be right out there on the launch pad with them, and we've kept that promise here today. As we've cut red tape, we're also helping to establish our nation's space transportation infrastructure. To date, we've licensed 12 spaceports with several potential sites in the pre-application phase for consideration. And we've established an FAA Office of Spaceports that will help us determine what services, rules, and regulation will be needed to support spaceports. And along with this, a whole suite of game-changing technologies and procedures to safely integrate space operations into the National Airspace System. By the start of next year, we plan to deploy a prototype of the Space Data Integrator, or SDI as we call it, that will feed real-time telemetry data from the space vehicle into the FAA's traffic flow management system so that we can manage air traffic much more surgically than we've been able to do historically. With SDI, we'll be able to block off less airspace for a space operation and release that airspace more quickly so it's available for other airspace users. And to complement SDI, we're already using time-based air traffic procedures to help us better manage the flow of aircraft around a space launch or reentry. This is also, I think, an inspiring time for young people as well. We want young people to know what the opportunities are in aerospace and space in particular that can come from a career, and we're working to reach kids of all ages. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be watching tomorrow's launch with a group of kids from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who really have the dream of going to space that's within their reach in ways that it never was for my generation. So I'll just leave you with this. Tomorrow's Crew Dragon launch is a great example of American ingenuity, but it's also a tremendous example of global leadership and partnership. But there are even bigger and better days to come. America is watching, and the entire world is too. They want to see this industry continue to do great things. And from what I've seen, this industry is stepping up to the task. And to that point, it's my privilege now to introduce Hiroshi Sasaki-san, who is the Vice President of JAXA. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for introducing me. I'm Hiro Sasaki, Vice President of JAXA. On behalf of all JAXA, I'd like to express the to the NASA and SpaceX staff for the Crew 1 launch operations. It is a great pleasure for me for this exciting missions. And Soichi Noguchi, Japanese astronaut, is well prepared for the launch. And Japanese experimental module Kibo of ISS is also ready and waiting for the crew arrival. This mission is a symbol. I think that this mission is symbol of the Japan and the U.S. partnership, and we want to go for, together to the ISS and Moon. I'm looking forward to the launch tomorrow, and I wish you a successful launch. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Sanita Williams, NASA astronaut, and very famous even in Japan.
Thank you, Sasaki-san. It's so great to be here in Florida. I'm so excited to see our friends launch tomorrow. Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi. It's just going to be awesome to see them get to the International Space Station and be up there working for the next 6 months. You know, the Commercial Crew Program with Boeing and SpaceX has just been spectacular. Watching the innovation from both companies has been amazing. I'm specifically looking forward to seeing them live up there because our crew, my crew, is going to be the complimentary crew on the Boeing Starliner probably at the end of next year. So this is an exciting time for all of us, watching them pave the way so that we can do low Earth orbit with Commercial Crew, and then we can move on to the next big steps. With that, I'm going to introduce one of the newest astronauts in the newest class of astronauts, Johnny Kim, who is going to be leading that exploration charge. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Johnny Kim, and I'm honored and privileged to be here. It's crazy to be thinking about what we're going to be doing tomorrow. It's hard to imagine how far we've come. The first certified flight of a commercial vehicle launching 3 American astronauts and an international partner to the space station. We're here because of the thousands of people who work behind the scenes. We truly stand on the shoulders of giants, from former astronauts to our administrator and our international partners. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for everyone. You've heard of all the benefits that Commercial Crew Program is bringing to the American people, to humanity. But what I'm most excited about is being able to see 4 of my friends launch on that rocket tomorrow. They're brothers, sisters, parents, children, but they're all humans, and they represent us and everything that we stand for humanity. And the successes of the Commercial Crew Program and the ISS, which has been habited for 20 years, has set the stage for future space exploration as we go deeper into space, as we return to the moon and beyond. So I am greatly privileged and honored to be here, and looking forward to tomorrow.
Well, now, thank you. We'll start taking questions from reporters. Please, 1 question for reporter. And our focus is on Crew 1. Any question other than Crew 1, we'll be happy to take it after this press conference. Our first question.
Hello, Marcia Dunn, Associated Press for Mr. Bridenstine. Elon Musk has been tweeting this morning that he's not feeling so good, and some of his COVID tests have come positive, some are negative. What's he telling you personally, and are you going to allow him to be in launch control or crew quarters even if his next test comes back positive? I mean, negative.
Sure. So I talked to Elon 2 days ago before this news came to be. I'll tell you, when somebody tests positive for COVID here at the Kennedy Space Center and across NASA, it is our policy for that person to quarantine and self-isolate. So we anticipate that that will be taking place. And, you know, we're looking to SpaceX to do any contact tracing that is appropriate. And then, of course, if there are changes that need to be made, we will look at those. But it's very early right now to know if any changes are necessary at this point. We just don't know.
Hi, Lauren Gresh with The Verge. My question's for Jim. Crew One comes at a very transitional time for our country, and as we prepare for a new administration, I'm curious, what are your hopes for the Commercial Crew Program, the future of human spaceflight at NASA, and how do you plan to work with any successors that to ensure a good future for the program?
So when we think about the Commercial Crew Program specifically, and I've said this a lot, we are exceptionally grateful to the leadership of Charlie Bolden and his commitment going back many years, and then of course Robert Lightfoot, and then the leadership that I've had. So this is a program that has spanned multiple administrations, and I have always said, and I will continue to advocate for NASA creating sustainable programs. That's what we look for, and that's something that I think we are achieving with the Artemis program. We have seen now bills in the House and in the Senate receive strong bipartisan support that fund the human landing system for the moon, that fund the Artemis program, and the things that we need to do to achieve that last not just decades, you know, a day when my children are my age and we have people living and working on the moon and in fact on Mars. So to achieve that, we're gonna need to have strong apolitical bipartisan support. We have worked for that day in and day out since the day I came to NASA. That was my commitment. And I look at what's happening in the House and the Senate, and I am confident that we have strong bipartisan support that will result in a sustainable program.
Thank you.
Hi, this is for Jim. Rachel Joy with Florida Today. Wondering if you could briefly kind of talk about the Falcon 9 engine issue that started with the GPS-3 mission when it had that last second abort, and how that played out in terms of engines being swapped out on GPS-3, Crew 1, and Sentinel-6, and how many ultimately are being swapped out across all three rockets.
So I'll address your question kind of big picture, but I would refer you, we're having a flight readiness review, and then we're going to have a press conference after that, and I would refer those questions to the press conference after the flight readiness review. But I will tell you, when we think about the commercial program itself, and I said this earlier, remember what we're trying to achieve. NASA wants to be one customer of many customers in a very robust commercial marketplace. One of the benefits of that is that when the Air Force or the Space Force or a commercial communication satellite launches, we're going to get data and information about the engines on the Falcon 9 rocket, about the performance of the avionics systems, etc. And so each one of these missions is actually very informative for what we're trying to achieve as an agency. So that is in fact what I think is so magnificent about the Commercial Crew Program in general. I would say, you know, when we go back to the shuttle era, every flight was a human flight, and every flight was in fact a NASA flight. And in this case, we've got commercial flights, as Bob Cabana has done. He's turned this facility into a multi-user spaceport where we have all of these different entities using these commercial vehicles, including now NASA, so we can get benefits from all of these other launches. So I'll leave it at that, but I would refer you, the flight readiness review is going to be happening today, and at the conclusion there will be a conference, and certainly that's a question that I would refer to them. Yeah.
Hi, it's Chris Davenport from the Washington Post for Jim. You touched on this in your opening remarks, but there's a lot of talk about this being the beginning of operational flights from U.S. soil, regular flights with crews to the space station. But the fact of the matter is that Crew Dragon's only flown a couple of times. Can you talk, please, a little bit about what you're doing to ensure that it's safe? It seems to me that this is a test mission still in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, Chris. So when we think about flights to space, they are all, we take all of them with great precaution. We take them very seriously. And every bit of attention to detail that we have on a test flight, we also have on operational flights. That being said, I've also said, we learn from every single flight, whether it's operational or a test flight. But here's the thing, we're launching 4 astronauts, 3 American astronauts, a Japanese astronaut. They're going to the International Space Station for a period of 6 months to do very real and serious work on behalf of the American people and on behalf of humanity at large. And so it is operational, but it is also true that when you think about space flight, every flight is a test flight. There's always something new and always something different. In this case, they're going for a longer period of time. They're going to be doing different things on the International Space Station. They're going with a crew of 4, and they're going to be doing some different things on the way. And each one of those requires us to be exceptionally diligent, which we always are. But make certain we don't take any of this lightly.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Melanie Holt, WFTV, and this question is for the administrator. I'm just piggybacking on an earlier question, really. We were talking about just the change that is coming now with this administration as well, and I'd like to know, if given the opportunity, would you like to continue the work that has already begun here?
So I will refer you to the comments that I made to Irene Klotz, who is standing behind you. I made them on Sunday, and I'm going to leave my comments there on that.
Thank you.
Hi, Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Jim, what is the status of the discussions with the Russians to do crew swaps for commercial crew and Soyuz?
So I know both countries are committed to the International Space Station and the amazing work that has been going on there now with humans on board for 20 years. We're moving into this new era where instead of NASA purchasing seats, we want to have an exchange of seats where American astronauts can fly on Russian Soyuz rockets and Russian cosmonauts can fly on commercial crew vehicles. That's the direction that I think both countries have an interest in achieving, and that's necessary because we want to see a day where if there is a challenge with one of the vehicles and it's down for a period of time, we have continual access to the International Space Station by both partners. So those discussions are ongoing. We don't have a resolution at this point, but certainly that's something both countries are working towards.
I could ask a second question of Mr. Dixon. Is the process that you just went through to certify this mission, how similar will that be when you're asked to certify flights with non-professional astronauts?
It's a great question. It'll be really the same process. And it's very similar to the process that we've been using for many years on unmanned commercial missions. I think that, though, to Jim's point about sustainable programs, the FAA being involved in this is part of scaling manned commercial space missions in a larger way, because they'll become a more routine part of the aerospace system in our country. So again, it's really building on the work that we've all done together. NASA and the FAA have partnered on many issues over the years, and this is just another form of that partnership.
Hi, Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. If I could ask 2, please. First, for Administrator Bridenstine, wanted to get your response to the appropriations bill in the Senate that provides about $1 billion to the HLS program, less than a third of what the administration requested. A little bit more than the House version, but not as much as you requested. Just wanted to see how that whole process is going to affect the HLS procurement and 2024 for Artemis. And for Sanita Williams, what's the latest you're hearing from the Boeing team on Starliner, and when those test flights may be, OFT2, crew flight test, and when you're going to fly, and what's driving the schedule right now? Thank you.
Great questions, both. I'll tell you, when it comes to the bills that we've seen in the House and the Senate, first of all, we currently have enacted a $600 million appropriation for a human landing system, which was done with bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, and has now resulted in 3 contractors being contracted to develop the human landing system. So that, I want to be clear, that is something that has not happened since 1972. So we are exceptionally grateful for where we are right now because of the bipartisan support we've had from the House and the Senate. And I would say when we look at what we're looking for 2021, number one, the House has again passed a bipartisan bill that funds a human landing system at $600 million. The Senate has passed a human landing, or they haven't passed it, but they have now presented a bill that has the human landing system funded at $1 billion. Again, strong bipartisan support in both chambers, very, very positive for the creation of a sustainable program, which of course is our highest priority. We've been through times in the past, the Vision for Space Exploration, where we have plans to go to the moon and they get canceled. The Space Exploration Initiative, we have plans to go to the moon and they get canceled. That's why this bipartisan apolitical support is so important. And I'll tell you, I'm very grateful for the fact that as hard as we have worked to achieve it, we now have that. Now, is it everything that we requested in the budget request? The answer is no, and you know that. But I will also tell you that the process is ongoing. There's a bill in the House. There's now a bill in the Senate. They're going to have to be conferenced. There's going to be discussions with the White House, and I think, at the end, we would like to see the full amount funded. But I will also say it is critically important to recognize the strong apolitical bipartisan support for the human landing system and the Artemis program in general.
Yeah, a quick note on Starliner. It's an amazing vehicle. It's great. We've got 2 of them that we're going to be flying, and we're making sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. And the next spacecraft to go up to OFT2 will be ready essentially for people to be on board. So it's a little bit different from OFT1 where we didn't have all of the systems in place. So it's a little bit more diligent that we're working on the spacecraft. End of this year, beginning of next year, we should have OFT2, CFT not too long after that, ready to follow probably by springtime. And knock on wood, I'm hoping me and my crew will be ready to go by the end of next year. It's going to be an exciting year with we also have to worry about what ports are open on the space station. It's getting a little crowded in space, and that's a really good thing, and we're just going to have to work into the schedule. So stand by. It's going to be before you know it.
This question is for the Administrator, Gio Benitez with ABC News. Mr. Administrator, we've talked about this before, and I know it's not lost on you that these historic launches are happening in the midst of a global pandemic. So you could even argue that more people are suffering now than they were in May when we saw that other launch. How do you convince the American people that this is an important mission that needs to happen right now?
Well, it really is an important mission. I mean, you look at the work that's happening that's going to be beneficial for humanity, and I'll just give you some that are very salient right now. We are advancing medicine using the microgravity of space in ways that you cannot do here in the gravity well of Earth, compounding pharmaceuticals. We are advancing immunizations, and the 2 that I talk about the most are salmonella and pneumonia. Immunization capabilities that have been advanced using the microgravity of space that have had transformational impacts for life here on Earth. But of course, we're talking about 4 astronauts going to the International Space Station. The amount of research that we can get given the complement on the International Space Station right now is good. When we have additional astronauts, a full complement of crew on the International Space Station, the amount of research is going to be transformational. And so it is critically important as we advance the human condition here on Earth, whether we talk about creating human tissue in the microgravity of space where it doesn't go flat like it does in the gravity well of Earth. That human tissue is regenerative in nature, and it can be used to maybe save lives one day. So these are the kind of technologies, when we talk about industrialized biomedicine, that are happening on the International Space Station right now, that may relate to this pandemic, that may relate to the next pandemic, that may relate to people right now that have macular degeneration. We're creating artificial retinas for the human eyeball on the International Space Station using advanced materials, not biomedicine, but advanced materials. So these are the kind of things that are transformational for life on Earth. And we believe that it's critically important. I also want to give compliments to Bob Cabana, shuttle astronaut, 4 missions, who has done great work as the leader of this center. We have had cases at this center, but people aren't getting it here. They're getting it other places because of the protocols Bob has put in place and the adherence, the great workforce here at Kennedy, the adherence to those protocols, social distancing, mask wearing. If you don't need to come to work, if you can do your work from home, do it from home. These are the protocols that we've put in place here at Kennedy. Bob has led the effort, and there's been a lot of success. So we need that to continue. But I feel good about where we are, and I think the American people do as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thank you for doing this. And Jim, I want to say thank you for being a great administrator. You've really motivated everybody and excited everybody with Artemis, just like the FAA gentlemen exciting the kids. It's so important. We've been waiting decades to go back to the moon. So thank you for your impetus and in your team in getting that done. Okay. So my question is also about Artemis. We've had a lot of hurricanes in the Gulf, very near and passing over the core stage. How is the core stage doing? How are NASA facilities doing there in Stennis and Michoud?
Well, for sure, there have been impacts from hurricanes and, of course, from COVID. And people are aware that the core stage of the SLS, I mean, that's the challenge right now. We've got to get that complete. We've got to get the green run test complete, and we're working on that every day. And the reason we do the green run test, we go through every system and every subsystem, and we test all of the limits to make sure all of the margin is, and we're going to find things. And when we find things, we're going to get them corrected. Remember, the SLS rocket is not, it is a test vehicle, but it's going to the moon. That rocket is going to fly to the moon. Well, I'll say this, it's going to launch Orion and the European Service Module to the moon. And so we have to make sure we get it right. And when we get this first one right, you know, the second SLS is going to launch American astronauts around the moon. So this is a program that is on the 5-yard line, and we're very excited about getting the test complete, getting the core stage here. You know, yesterday I was at the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, and the solid rocket boosters are there, ready to be integrated. They're not in the Vehicle Assembly Building now, but they're in the processing facility. But they're here at Kennedy. You know, we saw, you know, the Orion crew capsule is ready and tested. The European Service Module is ready and tested. The adapters and the fairings, everything is ready. We just got to get that core stage here. You know, we saw just recently the mobile launcher roll out and then roll back in. And yesterday I saw it in its completed form, and it's beautiful. Bob told me that would not be what holds us up, and so far he's been right. So there's a lot of positive things happening, and we're very excited about getting that first launch done. As of this point, the November date of 2021 for that first launch has not changed. We had margin in that schedule. But I will also tell you that with COVID and the hurricanes and some other things, that margin is going to slip. So right now we're holding to that schedule. Is that going to stay that way? It depends. I mean, as time goes on, we're going to learn more about how these impacts are affecting us.
Thanks. Could I ask one more question about COVID? If there's any research on the ISS directed towards COVID, or have you been contacted by the vaccine companies at all where the ISS could assist in that research? Thanks.
Not on the vaccines per se, but I will tell you, you know, when the pandemic first began, we had great folks at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is one of the NASA centers at Caltech University. And they, when they had to stop work on some projects because of COVID, they went to work in their own homes, and they created a ventilator that uses none of the parts that come from the other, you know, ventilator manufacturing capabilities. That ventilator has now been licensed to a number of companies for mass manufacturing if and when needed. I will tell you that the way we make sure that we protect planets when we fly robots to other worlds, that's basically with a fog, and we make sure that we don't take any microbes to any other worlds. Well, that fog actually kills viruses as well. And we have now partnered with a company in Ohio to use that fog to clean the inside of ambulances, and now it's going to be scaled up to clean the inside of classrooms and businesses and, you know, you name it, any closed space. So that there are great things that are happening at NASA that support the COVID response. But as far as any immunization capability at this point, if there is, I have not heard of it at this point.
Hello and konnichiwa. Phil Keating, Fox News. One question, as the rules imply, but kind of two parts. Have any technical issues at all arisen on Launchpad 39 with the Crew 1 stack, and after the splashdown of Demo 2 and all the analysis post-splashdown, was it basically concluded that was a flawless launch and mission?
I'll identify two issues that we took up and dealt with, and then I'll turn it over to Bob regarding the launch pad itself. So when the capsule came back, it looked like the ablative heat shield had some spots where it may have ablated more than we anticipated, within limits, within margin, but more than we anticipated. And of course, the good thing again about commercial crew and commercial resupply is that we've tested a lot of heat shields, and we've seen a lot of heat shields. Now, we've made adjustments to the heat shield to ensure that we understood what the issue was and fixed it. And then there was an issue on the parachute where they opened maybe a fraction of a second later than we anticipated, all within margin. I want to be very clear, all within what was specified as far as the realm of safety. But it might have taken just a little bit longer for those parachutes to deploy, so I think they deployed at around 6,000 feet instead of 6,500 or whatever the number was. But those are two issues that have been resolved. Again, I want to be clear, they were within margin and safe. We just wanted to understand it a little bit more, make some adjustments, and we did. As far as the pad, I'll turn it over to Bob.
So the pad's ready to go. But after every launch, regardless of what pad it is, there are maintenance procedures that have to be followed to inspect the pad, go back and correct some things that may have been damaged, but to ensure that the pad's ready for the next launch. And that goes for any pad out here. So SpaceX went through everything after every launch, and they're good to go.
I wasn't really referring to the pad itself, but the capsule and the rocket stack as we approach launch tomorrow night.
Yeah, right now, as the administrator said, we're going to have our launch readiness review with SpaceX here at noon, and we'll find out the latest detail on everything. Up until now, as far as I know, they're working no serious issues, and we're good to go, but we'll have the details after the launch readiness review at noon.
Good morning. This is Takuya Katsumura from Japan's Nippon Television. This is a question for Mr. Bridenstine. So tomorrow is going to be a historical operational flight of Crew 1, where Soichi Noguchi will be flying alongside American astronauts. How significant it is, and what's the meaning of it for NASA as well as for JAXA?
Yeah, no, it is extremely significant. Soichi Noguchi is an amazing astronaut. He's an amazing human being, and he's not just a Japanese hero, he's an American hero. I think he is one of the finest. I will tell you, when we think about the partnerships that we have around the world, Japan is among the best partners that we have. And I will also say that the significance of that partnership is here we are on the first operational mission of a commercial crew vehicle, and Japan is with us. Really on day one, Japan is with us on the International Space Station. We're looking at the enthusiasm in Japan for the Artemis program. And the budget that Japan is seeking to achieve humans landing on the moon for the first time since 1972, and knowing that Japan wants to be with us on the Artemis program, and committing themselves not just to the effort, but backing it up with financial resources. Japan is an amazing partner, and we're very, very grateful for the nation of Japan. And I look forward to all the amazing things that Soichi Noguchi is going to do on the International Space Station over the coming 6 months. So he is a special individual, and we look forward to a long and strong partnership with Japan as we continue.
This will be our last question.
Administrator David Curley from Discovery Channel. About Elon Musk and the possibility that he's not feeling good and could be ill. I know the crew is in quarantine. Has he had any contact with the crew or others, trainers or others who've been in contact with the crew? Have you been able to contact trace all that? And if not, is there a chance that if he is ill, you might have to delay?
So as far as any contact with the crew, I am unaware of it. That contact tracing should be underway right now. And of course, NASA and SpaceX are going to work through it together and come to the right conclusion. But look, this news just broke before this press conference. So look, if there are adjustments that need to be made, we will make them. I will tell you, our astronauts have been in quarantine for weeks. And they should not have had contact with anybody. They should be in good shape. All right.
But there is a chance you could delay if there is a contact trace that gets back to the crew.
I don't know that. I'm not going to say that. There's a lot to learn.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll close out the press conference with final remarks from the administrator.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for once again coming to a launch. This time, really the first time we go with a crew of 4 to the International Space Station on a commercial crew vehicle. It's the first time we go with one of our international partners, Japan, and we are so very grateful for the amazing partnership that we have with Japan. And it's the first time we go as a commercial vehicle licensed with humans into orbit, licensed by the FAA. So there's a lot of firsts on this flight, a lot of amazing discoveries that are going to happen by these 4 amazing astronauts over the next 6 months. So it's a great time to be at NASA, and it's a great time if you're an enthusiast of space exploration. Boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot happening now, not just in low Earth orbit, but with the Artemis program and all the way to the moon. So thank you all for being in attendance, and we'll look forward to a great launch tomorrow. Thank you.
Exciting times out here on the Space Coast in Florida. Port Canaveral, not very far away from the News Now from Fox East Coast hub right here in Orlando. As you guys can see, we are on standby for a news conference with Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. No doubt likely to be joined by other Democrats speaking about the election, the President Trump legal challenges, and President Trump not conceding. Also, we're hearing reports that the president is not cooperating with the transition of power process as well. So we are on standby for that right here on News Now from Fox. Meanwhile, voting continues in Pittsburgh. We've been showing you this live picture all morning as well. Take a look here. Again, this is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can see that counting continues. Not a whole lot of activity happening right now, but still people there working hard. Again, you're watching News Now from Fox. My name is Pilar Arias. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here with us. And always, as always, thank you for your patience and understanding. Just kind of while we set things up here on the East Coast hub of News Now from Fox. Things are looking a little different. They're sounding a little different. And we're just trying to get things up for you as best as possible. So if you are watching on the platform that has a chat feature, feel free to let me know where you are watching from and if you have any weekend plans. But again, my name is Pilar Arias, one of many News Now from Fox hosts right here in Orlando, Florida, and in Phoenix, Arizona. Some of you are going to see a very quick commercial break. For the rest of us, I'm going to bring you right out here to Orange County, Florida for the latest COVID-19 update. They actually say they're preparing for a vaccine distribution when the vaccine becomes available. But again, you are watching News Now from Fox. My name is Pilar Arias. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this, our final press briefing of the week. Today, Orange County Mayor Jerry O. Demings will discuss our COVID-19 numbers, antigen testing in Orange County, a word on the flu. The mayor will also give an update on CARES funding for individuals and families and report on the work of our strike teams, eviction diversion, and more. From the Florida Department of Health here in Orange County, Dr. Raul Pino was here with important data on COVID-19 trending in our area and a look at hospitalizations. We begin with Mayor Demings. Mayor?
Thank you, Dr. Williamson. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. As we approach the end of another week, we have a lot to report on this week. We have reached several milestones. This is the 86th press conference that we have done since we started updating our public on the coronavirus here within our community. I want to also talk today a little bit about the promise of vaccines yet to come, but let me just share with you a little bit about what we're doing proactively here in Orange County to prepare for the eventuality that a vaccine will be available. The FDA certainly has already approved various trials that are underway. We have different healthcare organizations here within our community who are participating in some of those trials. We are awaiting guidance from the state as to how the vaccines will be distributed. But in anticipation of that, we have been meeting regularly with our healthcare partners such as Dr. Pino and the Orange County Health Department, plus local hospitals and other healthcare partners. We have purchased a refrigerator, freezer, and an ultra-cold freezer to store approximately 150,000 doses of the vaccine. We have a photograph behind me that you can see what these refrigeration pieces of equipment will look like. We paid $67,000 for the 3 units that you see there. Obviously, the vaccine has to be kept cold at some pretty cold temperatures, and when it comes to time to give the vaccines out, our health services wanted to be prepared, and we want to serve as a model really for how to go about doing that by working with different partnerships within the community. Our public safety director, Danny Banks, is here somewhere in the room. There he is over there. And if you have any specific questions about that during the press event, we'll ask him to come up and share additional information with you. I said at the beginning of the week that we would likely surpass the 50,000 positive cases within Orange County this week, and we have. We now have 50,135 cases reported in Orange County year to date. That is an increase of 375 from yesterday. Sadly, I report again that 600 Orange County residents have died as a result of the coronavirus, and that is an increase of 9 since Monday. Again, our prayers go out to those families who have endured the loss of a loved one as a result of the novel coronavirus. Our 2-week positivity rate is inching up. It is now at 7.1%. Dr. Pino will have more details about the numbers that I just shared with you. There's some good news that I will share with you. We have increased the level of testing here within Orange County because of the rapid antigen test that we have made available at Barnett Park. It is proving to be a very popular thing for our residents. Orange County Health Services is also offering molecular or PCR tests at that site. Yesterday, we administered 1,268 different tests, and we have the capability to offer as many as 4,000 tests to Orange County residents within a week. And so we're off to a good start. This was the first week that we offered the antigen testing at Barnett Park. The team will remain at Barnett Park Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. until the end of the year. All ages are welcome, and it is a drive-through testing facility. For more information, please go to ocfl.net/testing, and you can click on number 1, and the testing map will come up with how to get to the Barnett Park location. Remember, however, that no appointments are necessary. You can actually just drive up without an appointment. As we approach the holiday season, I believe that a number of our residents really want to know whether they're positive or not. And so as a suggestion to those who will be gathering with family members, if you're going to have family who live in the area and you're going to come together, or family coming from outside the area, encourage your family members to get tested. At least that way you know when you congregate with your families what your status is. And so it may help everyone if someone needs to be isolated from the rest of the family to preclude the family from having the virus spread amongst itself. I want to commend the Florida Department of Health in Orange County and our Orange County Health Services for all of the recent successful flu events that have been underway here within the community. In total, 2,251 residents have gotten flu shots through the events that our Orange County Health Services and the Health Department have sponsored. Dr. Pino will likely share additional information about an event coming up this coming Saturday. Just as a reminder, our Cares for Residents program will reopen its portal on this coming Monday, November the 16th at 8 a.m. Of course, this is a program whereby our residents can make application for $1,000 if they have been impacted by the coronavirus. In order to serve more residents, the CARES team has changed an eligibility requirement to now allow multiple applications per household. Before, only one person per household could receive the funding. Now, if there is a roommate, a family member impacted by COVID, they can apply, even if someone else in the household already received a CARES grant. We do have Ms. Diane Arnold, who's here if you have any specific questions about that. However, you are still not eligible to apply if you have already been approved for CARES Act funding. So if you yourself have been approved, you can't reapply at this point. But others in your household who can show an impact are eligible to apply. We have, at this point, the last update I had, we're just under about $7.9 million in funding that has been sent to the Controller's Office for payment. Again, we will open the portal on Monday, coming at 8 a.m. You can get additional information by going to our website, ocfl.net/orangecares. We said that so many times now in these press events, I know everybody knows it by heart, right? Okay. Eviction diversion, let me just share a little bit of information about that program. We have, to date, paid out some $5 million for eviction diversion. This is where landlords and tenants agree to make application together to keep a family in their home. They can get up to $4,000 per household. We have $10 million remaining. We have until December the 30th of this year to expend the dollars that we have programmed and allocated. So there's still an opportunity for families who are in need to be able to apply to get the assistance that they are looking for. If you watch our briefings, you know that we are working hard with our partners to get our residents back on their feet and back into the job market as quickly as possible. We are partnering with Career Source of Central Florida and Valencia to offer a variety of short-term training courses at the Orange County Convention Center starting November 30th. We have programmed about $7 million in assistance through Career Source of Central Florida.
All right, everybody, some of you are going to see a very quick commercial break.
Assistance through Career Source of Central Florida's program called Help is Here, the Help is Here program. We have allocated some $2 million for that, and some of the courses being offered include carpentry, masonry, commercial truck driving, IT or network support specialists, and medical office specialists. I'm told that we have vacancies, job opportunities, in other words, in our community for those respective fields. And so if you find yourself unemployed and you want to upskill, learn a new skill, we encourage you to make applications for these programs and go through these short-term training programs. To qualify, you must be at least 18 years old, a resident of Orange County, and able to verify that you lost your job or suffered reduced wages because of the COVID-19 pandemic. For more information, you can go to CareerSourceCentralFlorida.com. Helps here. CareerSourceCentralFlorida.com. Help is here. Our strike teams continue to function within our community. We continue to get each day a fair number of complaints about certain types of businesses that are non-compliant. Our teams, I have to say, they've rolled up their sleeves and they've visited some 4,800 different county businesses over time. We still see a relatively high rate of compliance, about 81%. And lastly, we are a caring county, and we try hard to create programs to help everyone, but especially those who are in need and the downtrodden. I want to talk about a program. The first annual Hope-a-thon will be broadcast on Orange TV and feature 24 hours of inspiring stories from people who are recovering addicts. Individuals and families will share stories of hope and redemption. Funds raised by the Hope-a-thon will benefit local charities that support recovery. Those charities include One Heart for Women and Children and the Zebra Coalition. You can go to the website at thehopeathon.com for more information. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pino at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we go into COVID-19, as the Mayor mentioned, our next flu event is going to be this Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock. We have sufficient vaccines to vaccinate approximately 1,200 individuals. So Colonial Promenade Mall at 9 o'clock this Saturday, first come, first serve, no insurance needed, no payments needed. It's just get in your car, roll off your sleeve, should go. We also have the choice for people who needs to walk into the place, and also for those who may have accessibility issues. Again, our lines start at 9 o'clock. It will run until 3 p.m. We may be closing the lines by 2 o'clock, depending on volume. With that, with COVID-19, the mayor mentioned that we have to achieve or get to two sad numbers, over 50,000 infections in our county and over 600 people who have died. And I say over 6 because 9 deaths continue to be on review at the state level. So at least that number will go up by 9. Our recovery rate is 93%, and the age of the individual who has sadly died are from 46 to 87, 4 female, 5 male, 1 Hispanic, 6 non-Hispanics, 2 of unknown ethnicity, 2 Asian, 2 black, 1 other, and 4 white. 6 of the individuals had pre-existing conditions. 3 we don't know if they had. I also brought some data that I would like to discuss with you to give you some illustration. There has been a lot of question about hospitalization, ICUs, people, have seen what's happening in other areas of the country. So we want to give you some information where we stand. So this is our hospital bed census. We are doing this now weekly. So the last week that we have full data is up to the 7th of November, right here. And if you can see, we still have over 1,000 beds available every day in our county, which is a good inventory for beds. With regard to ICU and census availability for COVID-19, in orange, right here you have the number of ICU beds that are available. And in gray, you have the number of ICU beds in use for COVID-19. And in blue, the total census of ICU. So as you have seen, our ICU use has declined. And last week on the 7th, we have 29 people on.
All right, everybody. Mike Page is going to be taking over in Phoenix, Arizona. We are on standby for a news conference with Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker. That should be just moments away. So Mike Page is going to be taking over News Now from Fox. The crew here in Orlando. We'll see you again on Monday.
Thanks so much, Pilar, and to the team there, Fox 35 in Orlando. We continue to roll on here on News Now from Fox as we wait for Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Should be happening at any moment. We'll keep an eye on that. As soon as that happens, we'll bring it to you. I'm your host, Mike Page, here as we continue to bring you the very latest across the board right here on News Now from Fox. We do have a live event that already popped up that we are going to take you out to Georgia right now, where this is the bail trial of the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, where the father and son accused of killing Arbery are asking a judge for bail right now. And that shot goes a little bit in and out there in the black as they are playing out a video right now. We'll keep an eye on that and go to take you to the courtroom right now. You're watching News Now from Fox, everyone.
Thank you, sir. So, all we're doing is take 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
All right, everybody, it looks like there's going to be a little delay in that courtroom, so we'll keep an eye on that for you. We'll also be keeping an eye right now on Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, but I do want to take you out to a House hearing talking about financial services. We bring you the latest here on News Now from Fox.
A bulwark against broader financial and economic stress. It's worth recognizing how things might have been different. This foundation would not exist after a once-in-a-century shock, if not for a decade of work by officials and the banks themselves to make banks stronger and more stable, and to make banking supervision fairer, more efficient, and more transparent. Those values are not contingent, fit only for an economic boom. They represent an ethic and a commitment to addressing the most pressing supervisory and regulatory issues in the most effective ways that are even more critical during a crisis. That ethic has steered the Federal Reserve through the last 7 months, and it will continue to guide us through the recovery. COVID-19 changed many aspects of the Federal Reserve's work. It also affirmed the values and priorities that remain the same, those that will continue to guide us in our support for the financial system, the economy, and the country long after the COVID event has passed. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Is it on? The Vice Chairman calls
Nancy Pelosi coming to the
Acting
podium.
Comptroller
Let's listen.
Brooks. You are now recognized for 5 minutes to present your oral testimony.
The Veterans Compact Act, critical legislation to prevent veteran suicide. As our nation confronts the accelerating coronavirus crisis, it's important to note that this has affected tens of thousands of veterans and VA workers. It is imperative that we secure even more funding to support the VA and care for our veterans and their families. I also had the privilege of participating in the work of Elizabeth Dole for the observance that she had on Veterans Day this year. It was in cars at the Kennedy Center, and some of us were virtual, but Secretary, Senator Elizabeth Dole has been an angel for our veterans, and I was honored to be asked by her to join Senator John McCain and others to be part of the initiative to honor our hidden heroes, the families that care for our veterans. Thank you, Elizabeth Dole, for all of that. Again, as we honor the needs of veterans in every area, we must recognize that it's not just the VA that meets their needs. It's the role that veterans small businesses play, and we want more opportunity for that. Many of our veterans rely on Medicaid. They constantly come to us and say that the Medicaid piece is important to their lives, food stamps, and housing assistance. So many of the things that we have actually in the coronavirus bill, the HEROES bill, affect our veterans. Yesterday, on a separate, associated with this, yesterday, as you're probably aware, Leader Schumer and I had a call with President-elect Joe Biden. We'll stay in close touch in the coming days. We spoke about the intensifying pandemic, and the economic crisis accompanying it, and about the urgent need for Congress to pass a bipartisan bill in the lame duck session that provides resources to fight the pandemic and relief for working families and small businesses, support for state and local governments to keep the frontline workers on the payroll, and engage expanded unemployment insurance and affordable health care for families. The health care piece, of course, being essential. At the same time, as you know, earlier in the week, the administration was, instead of crushing the virus, trying to crush the Affordable Care Act. And of course, we were very pleased at the presentations that were made in support of the Affordable Care Act in the courts. But on our call, back to our call, that wasn't on our call, we also discussed the need for bipartisan solutions to create millions of good-paying jobs, including through investments in infrastructure, manufacturing, research and development, and clean energy. Infrastructure legislation has largely not been a partisan issue. We believe this is a good place where we can find common ground. But that is something we can work on now, but as we go into the new Congress. But for now, the two areas of the coronavirus and also to pass an omnibus bill in a bipartisan way. I'm optimistic that that will happen. I'm an appropriator, so I have a good rapport with the appropriators, and I think that left to their own devices, they can get this done, as I've said before. Chairman Shelby and I had this conversation, assuring each other that we want to have a bill. Again, our focus in the Congress now in this lame duck, it continues to be on COVID relief. This is a red alert, all hands on deck. As Chairman Leader Schumer and I discussed yesterday, this is an emergency of the highest magnitude. And yet, our Republican colleagues want to focus elsewhere instead of recognizing as the health emergency, which science has given us a path to crush. Just let's, again, we had worse numbers than even yesterday. The numbers speak very eloquently. 160,000 infections were reported, a horrifying number following more than a week of over 100,000 infections a day. These levels are 2 times higher than the summer peak. More than 67,000 Americans are hospitalized with COVID. a new record threatening overwhelming our hospitals and our hospitals in our rural areas too. Over 10 million people have been infected. Over 10 million people. 240,000 Americans have died because of this pandemic. According to a news report this morning, which I'm sure you have all seen, it was reported that more than 130 Secret Service agents are infected or quarantining in the wake of Trump's reckless campaign schedule. 130 Secret Service agents. Meanwhile, on the economic front, over 20 million Americans are on unemployment. America has 1 million fewer teachers and education jobs compared to a year ago, and that has an impact on our children's education. 8 million people have fallen into poverty. 17 million children are food insecure. There is no time to waste. We must save lives and livelihoods. And yet, Republicans in Congress continue their tactics of delay, distort, and deny, which has led to deaths. Now they're trying to distract and divide the country as they refuse to accept the election results. The election is over. Joe Biden is the president-elect, elected with a mandate of over 78 million votes. But don't take it from me. The Elections Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council and the Election Infrastructure Sector Coordinating Executive Committees said in their joint statement, this November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. It went on to say, while we know there are many unfounded claims and opportunities for misinformation and the process of our elections, we can assure you that we have the utmost confidence in the security and integrity of our elections, and you should too. The Republicans, shamefully, pretending otherwise, are doing serious damage to our American democracy here and as viewed throughout the world, and making it even harder to address the massive health and economic crises facing America right now. The longer the Republicans keep up the charade, the further out of control the COVID crisis will spiral and more endangered Americans will be. I urge our Republicans to accept the facts, acknowledge the crisis, and immediately come to the table to work on COVID relief. Again, this takes place at a time where there's a vaccine on the horizon, giving people hope. But that should also give them encouragement to listen to science on the way to the vaccine. Testing, tracing, treatment, mask wearing, isolation, separation, sanitation, all of those things. Because the sooner we do that, and the sooner we have a vaccine, the sooner we crush the virus. I hope it would be an incentive for people to follow science all the way to the vaccine. And in that score, in our COVID bill, we do have sufficient a great deal of funding for the vaccine. The development, as I said yesterday, should be taken up under the defense bill. I just don't know why the president is not doing that. And then also, we want to make sure that when the vaccine occurs, there will be sufficient funding and sufficient vaccine to reach everyone in our country, as well as in the world, because as we all know, unless we're all secure, none of us is. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
A record number of women, Republican women, have been elected to the Congress this year. Republicans are saying it's the year of the Republican women. Is it?
Well, I'm excited that we have more women in Congress. That doesn't mean we have shared views, but hopefully we can find common ground on some. some issues that related to domestic violence was how the Women's Caucus in a bipartisan way came together in the beginning. Issues that relate to teen pregnancy have been a bipartisan focus over time, reducing that. So let's see. Let's be optimistic and let us see. But I congratulate and welcome each and every one of them. Of course, we have 90. We have, I think, 9 or 10 new women coming in to our caucus this time. We're sadly leaving Anita Lowy, Susan Davis, a few of the women in the Congress. So, but we're happy to have all these new members, and they're beautifully diverse. So, yeah, Chad?
Thank you. Good morning. So, obviously, you're going to have a narrow majority here. You always talk about know your power.
Know your.
What is your power right now?
Oh, know your power. Yeah.
With a what is know your power? What is your power right now with a smaller majority, pressures inside the caucus, and your route to the speakership when you lost votes last time?
Well, let me just say on that score, and we are still very much involved in these races. We have a number that are just haven't been counted. When we were impatiently waiting for the count on the presidential, it seemed like an eternity, and now it's another week later. So we're still involved in that. But listen, we had a very deep victory 2 years ago. I don't think that people are quite understanding. Of the 40 seats that we won, 31 were in Trump districts. He wasn't on the ballot. And right away, we said he's going to be on the ballot. That's a steeper climb in these districts. And with the actions that were taken, we saved most of those seats. So we're very proud of that. We now have a president of our party in the White House, Joe Biden. We have a majority in the House, albeit smaller, but nonetheless of a majority, 132 gavels, chairs of committees, subcommittees, and the rest, the beautiful diversity of our caucus, and we see it as a tremendous opportunity as we go forward, because we have to address the fact is that President Trump, to his credit, turned out a big vote. And in some of these districts, which were, people wondered how we won them before. They were so Trumpian. And now with him on the ballot, bringing a bigger vote. But we're getting ready already for the next time. A number of our candidates have already said they're going to run again. I'm not going to make any announcements for anybody, but a number of them have told me that they're ready. They loved being in Congress. They were proud to have won, and they were proud of the campaign that they made. After Joe Biden was declared the winner on Saturday, I spent most of the weekend listening to those who did not win the election. They succeeded in their campaign in terms of putting forth their views, but will not be coming to Congress right now. I have pages, in fact, books of notes about how they saw what happened in their districts and how they see how we go forward. And it is clear that a number of the people who, there are certain issues that may have worked one place or another, but we have to have a deep dive. We have to really have the data. And so all of them gave me their view for the moment and said, when we get more data, we'll have a clearer picture.
But is there an avenue in any way, by having a smaller majority, and what that means for both the caucus, control of the House, and for your speaker?
May I remind you that we have a president of the United States. We have a president of the United States. That is so very important. And whether you're in the minority or majority, if the president is of your party, you have more power. And I think that that's what Mitch McConnell's going to find out now, that whether he's in the majority or the minority, not having Donald Trump in the White House is going to change his leverage and that dynamic. But I'm very proud. I'm very proud. I knew it was hard in terms of what we did before. I never said that we were going to pick, all these pollsters did, and that's another question about the polling and the rest and the overestimation of what could be there. But the fact is, President Trump got out his vote, and in those districts, some of them, he made a difference. And every majority is fragile, but we're well on our way to the next election. As we are counting still for this, have a running start with some of these same candidates saying that they will run, and others who are waiting because of their own personal decisions to run next time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the president continues, as you noted, to falsely claim that he won the election in one form or another. His allies are making unfounded claims about irregularities with voting machines. We've seen the social media companies be forced to step in and crack down. I'm curious, from your perspective, have you seen big tech do enough, specifically a website like Facebook, to correct the president's lies?
I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I don't know what they have been doing, but I know they've been part of the problem all along. And I just refer back to the Elections Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council and the Election Infrastructure Sector Coordinating Executive Committees and what they said. The November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. There's no evidence that any voting system was deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or in any way compromised. And this is so important because we've had resistance from the other side in protecting the critical infrastructure of our elections. It's the mechanics of it, and this is a good report back that things were going well. Two, to your point, what is happening in the social media that is so poisonous to our system, and how do we have a remedy for that? It is social media. The technology is a blessing, but it's a double-edged sword in terms of communication, democratizing the spread of information. So I would hope that they would have some sense of responsibility because they were very much a part of causing this problem to begin with. But I do also want to say that with the president, it's not just another branch of government, the White House. It is the bully pulpit. Joe Biden knows why he's there. He has a plan to be effective for America's working families, and he will have, he will have the stage. So it's not as if we're trying to get a distinction made here and press is engaged in equivalence, and which I think was unfair. But nonetheless, in terms of having the bully pulpit, it's not just a branch of government. It's not just having the White House, not just a branch of government, not just appointments to jobs and a cabinet arrest. It's the connection with the American people. President Lincoln, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. And it leapfrogs over so many other misrepresentations. I hope that that everybody will give Joe Biden a chance to have his message out there. What I saw during the Trump administration is he could say anything. It would be 2 days worth of news, whether it had any value or not. Let's hope that everyone will give Joe Biden the chance. He is the president. 78 million votes and still counting. A mandate in our country. So my confidence and my hope springs from the public. The American people are so good. They're very clear about meeting their needs. And one of the messages for us in all of this is the clarity that behooves us to say some of the fears that they have: automation, globalization, diversity, climate issues, and the rest. We want them to know that what we're talking about is we're all going down this path together. This is not a zero-sum game. If one person wins, another person loses. No. And there is a place in the future for every person in our country, and how we use the automation, the globalization, and those issues in a way to give them that assurance and those jobs. I said yesterday, it's a four-letter word. I say it all the time, a four-letter word: jobs, 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 which contribute not only to the economic health of families, but the health and well-being of America's families. Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, how does the smaller majority, how does that affect your legislative approach? Are you going to have to compromise more? Are there bills that you're not going to be able to put on the floor?
No, not at all. We have a president of the United States. Remember, we're going to have the opportunity to have bills signed into law. I'm very proud of our caucus because we're beautifully diverse. As I always say, it is our diversity is our strength, our unity is our power, and our unity springs from our commitment to America's working families. And that is what we'll be talking about, as I mentioned, putting together a jobs bill that involves building the infrastructure of America in a resilient and green way, doing so in a bipartisan way, doing so that everybody in our country benefits, both with jobs, with workforce development, and with services, schools, et cetera, housing in their areas. So it won't have that much effect at all, no. Excuse me,
That's going to require some buy-in from Republicans in the Senate, especially if they keep the majority. So how do you shift your approach on coronavirus?
Yeah, I think you're making a more of a, as I said, we had a very big win in the last election. It is smaller now, but it is not, we still have the power of the majority. But on top of that, our leverage and our power is greatly enhanced by having a Democratic president in the White House, especially Joe Biden, who is the man. He is the one who will put forth an agenda and will work together on that, as we have done, as we did with President Obama and Joe Biden as Vice President of the United States. I don't see that as any challenge at all. I see it as an opportunity. Yeah.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Last question.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On what you said about Leader McConnell, can you expand on that? You said he's going to find out. What do you mean?
Well, he's been known to come to my office and say, I'm not doing anything Donald Trump doesn't want. So to me, that was like an abdication of your first branch of government responsibilities. You're just going to do whatever the president wants? No. This is a separation of powers, something very, very important, the genius of our Constitution, the separation of powers. And if we're just saying whatever the president wants and we're not having the input or the, shall we say, scrutiny as to what the best way to go is, listening to the beautiful diversity of our caucuses, then we are disserving the American people. So look, there's no question when the president is a president of your party, your leverage and your power is greatly increased. You must know that. You must know that. So again, for the good of the country, I am so overjoyed that Joe Biden is president of the United States. His decency, his vision, his values, his authenticity, and his connection with America's working families. So I couldn't be more thrilled. But I also know that he respects the legislative branch and that there's a collaboration and we'll work together to put legislation together that will be hopefully bipartisan and signed into law. But again, the big partner in all of this is the public, the American people. They want access to health care, especially during a pandemic. They want good-paying jobs. They want clean government. That was our agenda in 2018. It continues to be. For the people, lower health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, preserving the pre-existing condition. For the people, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green, resilient way. For the people, cleaner government, H.R. 1, which will this time be H.R. 1 again, to end the role of big dark money in politics. It also will end a lot of the voter suppression that is out there. So we couldn't be more thrilled. We're sad to have lost some of our members. As I say, many of them are ready to come right on back. Some want to be in the Biden administration. All of them proud of their campaigns. And I think universally thrilled that Joe Biden is president of the United States. Thank you all.
Accept any responsibility?
Here we got to correct there. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Joe Biden is president-elect and will be until January 2021 there. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thank you so much for continuing to join us right here on News Now from Fox, always bringing you the news as it's happening worldwide right here. We do appreciate you being here. Some of you are going to be taking a short 2-minute break, but when you come back, we're going to take you out to Georgia, where the father and son accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery are asking the judge for bail. We will listen into this court hearing when we all come back. All right, here on News Now from Fox.
Shows that defendant Greg McMichael poses an active and significant risk of obstructing justice in that he is working with family members to delete and get rid of evidence of significance after his arrest. States 12, May 17th, defendant refers to having his account killed.
Were y'all able to get my account killed?
He took both phones with him.
Good.
Because I couldn't get into it. He said, don't worry about it, let me take it out.
This evidence goes directly to prong number 4 of 1716-1 in IELA, posing a significant risk of intimidating witnesses and obstructing justice. In addition to that, Judge, if we were to continue on with States 12, and I'm not going to play multiple more clips, I don't think that's the best use of our time. He talks about a particular witness and tells Lee, when he answers the phone, you tell him flat out not to say anything. That's influencing a witness, and that's recorded in a jail call as well. So in terms of influence and obstruction, I'd ask the court to look closely at the defense affidavits that were submitted here of fact witnesses, and note all the times that Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael are referred to as having spoken to them prior to the issuance of those affidavits. That goes directly to obstruction and influencing witnesses, in that these defendants were on a campaign. It was a campaign to influence witnesses to their benefit in this particular case. Continuing on with this prong, I want to talk briefly about jail mail and the coded letter and the handbook. So that is included in States 13 and 14. States 13. Some things to note about this letter, Your Honor. From Greg McMichael, inmate ID, to Zachary Langford, a witness that you heard from yesterday, Your Honor. And here is the code itself. That's available to the court. I know you've seen it on the thumb drive. To a witness that the defense called in support of their bond here. And then for the risk of intimidating witnesses and obstructing justice, Your Honor, and also for a factor that I'd ask the court to consider about whether Greg McMichael in particular is capable of following the instructions of the court were you to grant him bond. Let us now look at the inmate handbook, which has the rules for mail. Inspected and confiscated if written in code. The purpose of putting this in, it goes without saying, Your Honor, is to show two things. Significant risk of intimidating witnesses and obstructing justice, as well as a factor that I think the court should consider whether, as a good candidate for bond, this defendant would be willing to follow the instructions and rules of the court if bond conditions were imposed on him, despite the fact that he is actively defying the rules of the Glenn County Sheriff's Office. Influencing and obstructing. And I don't think I need to belabor the point of the racist communications that the court heard about yesterday. That actually goes to a number of things. It could go to significant risk of committing a new crime. It also goes to risk of flight now that we're talking about a concurrent Department of Justice investigation as well. Now, Greg McMichael is not the only person who's talking about actively having people delete and get rid of evidence. Here's a phone call from Travis McMichael to Lee McMichael involving his sister and having her phone turned off to help evade our investigation in the case.
Really?
Piss me off, you know.
Yep. Yep. I'm trying to send her away, nobody would take her.
Nobody's done it. I don't blame them. Just turn her phone off. She's on your plate. Give her that other phone that I have for calls only, man.
Yep.
Remind the court that the failure on any one prong is sufficient for you to deny bond. Here we have now Travis McMichael actively obstructing the investigation of this case. I now want to talk briefly about flight risks, Your Honor, which is a factor that the court must consider. It's the first prong. The court shall be authorized to release a person only if the court finds that the person poses no significant risk of flight, which I believe is a factor for the court to consider here. As shown to the court, these defendants were initially charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, and party to the crime thereof. Our aggravation notice puts them on notice that life without the possibility of parole is an option in this particular case if convicted. Their social media, evidence of racism, and State's Exhibit Number 6, the public DOJ, Department of Justice, announcement of this concurrent investigation certainly should give the court pause as to this particular prong about whether these defendants pose a good candidate, either of them, good candidates for bond. We submit to the court that because of this evidence that we've submitted to the court, they are not. And they are a risk of flight because of the possibility, I even say maybe probability, that there may be additional charges that are forthcoming for them.
That is so objectionable. We talked about this yesterday.
I think it's all right. It's the state's position. I'll take this.
The SPLC document, the business record, is State's Exhibit Number 7, and that's for the court's review as well in support of this flight risk. Consistent with that, Your Honor, you've heard about racist social media, racist messaging. There's a racist text message about having no, I won't say the word, ends around, and that's available to the court as well. This all goes to the danger. It also goes to risk of flight based on what's been shared with the court. There's some social media that was recovered by the state as part of this investigation. First, pertaining to Greg McMichael, a video clip that was recovered from his social media, admittedly sent to him, but I'll ask the court to note in context this racist song associated with this video, because it will make sense when you see the next video that I'm about to play for the court as well. And I will caution the court that in terms of this racist video, it's a little disturbing.
Oh, you got some music on your phone sitting there quiet ass car with your ass? Yeah, bro, I got slaps.
I'm an Alabama nigger and I want to be free. Hell with the NAACP. I don't drink, I don't cuss. I want to ride on the front of the bus. I'm an Alabama nigger and I want to be free. Hell with the NAACP.
In context, Travis McMichael received a video, laughed at it, and turned around and resent it to another video. So you have the same song, different video, two defendants living in the same house. In this instance, Travis McMichael, having received it, laughed at it and sent it.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to...
Understood. In sum, Judge, as I submit this to the court shall be authorized to release a person on bail if the court finds that the person poses no significant risk of flight, danger, risk of committing new felony, risk of intimidating witnesses, or obstructing justice. Your Honor, we've presented evidence in rebuttal as to each of these four factors. and any one of which would be sufficient for this court to deny bond and bail in this particular case. So my final thoughts, Your Honor, is that you should deny bond here. Defendants are not entitled to it. They've been indicted in a timely fashion. There are no time frames that are applied to them because of our judicial emergency and because of the timeliness of our indictment, nor are they deserving. I submit to the court that the evidence presented to the court shows that they are poor candidates for bond. They're not entitled to it. I will remind the court that we are aware of a pending speedy trial demand that's been filed by co-defendant Mr. Bryant. Fortunately, because of the judicial emergency, we don't need to be too worried about those time constraints now, and I understand the terms of court here in Glenn County are 6 months versus in Cobb where they happen to be 2-month terms. But my point in saying that is we're cognizant of the fact that we've been put on notice that speedy trial issues, once we're able to try the case, will be an issue, Your Honor. And I can stand here affirmatively for the court and tell the court that we'll be ready. As soon as it is feasible to try this case, we'll be ready to try the case. I would suggest to the court that the appropriate remedy today is to deny this bond. And if we're unable to get this case ready and tried when it's feasible for us to do that, the issue could always be revisited by the court at some later date. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Rich.
Your Honor, it's a bit like being in Wonderland, where the actual characteristics of a person don't matter, but the information, the evidence that's in dispute is what the state's asking the court to rely on to deny bond. The best predictor of future behavior, which is what this court has to do in this case, in determining whether to set bond, is past behavior. Travis McMichael twice has sworn an oath to uphold the laws, to abide by the laws, to follow orders as given. Once when he enlisted in the United States Coast Guard, and the second time as a commercial captain with Metzen Marine. Everything about his life has been consistent with upholding his oath, to abide by the laws, to follow orders when given, and to go above and beyond the call of duty. That's who Travis McMichael is. And the state glosses over and says, we don't need to worry about that. This is not the day for gold stars. This is the day for gold stars. This is when past behavior matters. Because it's up to this court to examine the person who you've never met, you know nothing about, until we provide you evidence. Evidence in the form of witnesses who know Travis McMichael. Evidence in the form of a criminal history printout. Evidence in the form of documentary evidence. And that's what we've done over the last day, and I know it's been a marathon. But we brought to the court Travis McMichael's mother, subjected her to cross-examination, and what she told you is, Travis, born and bred in Brunswick, all of his ties are here in this community. He's got a now 4-year-old son, court has pictures of, who means the world to him. Suggesting, Your Honor, fairly strongly that he's not a risk to flee, because if he did, he would never see his son again. You know, it's easy to get a preacher to come in and say good things about a parishioner. That's kind of their job. In this case, we have the mother who is no longer, the mother of Everett, who is no longer in a relationship with Travis. who shares custody 50-50, who engages with Lee McMichael on a weekly basis, who is still part of their lives despite the fact that they don't have a relationship anymore. They just share Everett. And I think that speaks volumes for Travis. Lee McMichael told you about Travis's financial situation. He's got very little money. I think she said he had $6,000 to his name. Where can he possibly go and survive with that amount of money? Not to mention the media that's present and covering this case. Where in the world could Travis McMichael go, flee the jurisdiction of the court without being seen, recognized, and delivered back, never to see the light of day again? It'd be ridiculous. Travis McMichael has abided by every order ever given to him by commanding officers. And that's why we took the time, and I know it may have been a little bit wearying, but we took the time to put in all of those things about his Coast Guard career. The state wants to say he's dangerous. He poses a danger to the community because he has private exchanges of an offensive nature, no doubt about it, with his friends in the community. But if you look at his behavior, his actual behavior towards other people, towards people of all races, all religions, all socioeconomic classes, you see a man who is known as the life of the party, funny, a mentor, someone you want there with you when things get dicey. You saw the letters of commendation, the lives he's saving, black and white, when people are in trouble. Kurt Hall, sergeant in the Marines, a person of color who lived with Travis McMichael during the time they were posted, I believe, in Pascagoula, who had nothing but wonderful things to say about Travis as a person, as a Coast Guard enlistee, and as a man. And so if past behavior predicts future behavior, that's who you're dealing with. Someone who abides by the rules, someone who is willing to abide by any conditions this court sets, someone who goes above and beyond to save people, no matter what private offensive messages he has with friends. That's a diversion. And you know it's a diversion, Your Honor, because you have Travis McMichael's criminal history. He's 34 years old. There was not one thing brought into evidence by the state to indicate that Travis McMichael commits felonies or poses a danger to anybody except the disputed facts of this case. He shows the video, the now infamous Roddy Bryan video, to prove that Travis is a danger to the community. But as my esteemed colleague, Mr. Hogue, has once said, that's the knothole in the fence. To look at that video and claim that Travis McMichael is a danger to the community fails to see not only the span of this case, which we will get into, but the span of Travis McMichael's life. And so when we talk about Ashley Langford, Ashley Sawyer, Lee McMichael, Zachary Langford, Sean Sawyer, Kurt Hall, we are talking about people who grew up with Travis, who have known him since grade school, in the case of Lee McMichael, obviously since he's born, but certainly from grade school, high school, Coast Guard, post-Coast Guard, Metzen Marine, living in Brunswick, this county. He's not a danger to flee. He's not a danger to the community. In fact, he is an asset to the community, and he's proven that by always being employed, paying his taxes, never getting in trouble, never confronting people unless he himself is put in danger. And that was one time by one man named Ahmaud Arbery. And actually, Mr. Arbery confronted him twice. Nobody else in the span of Travis McMichael's life has had a run-in with him. The Ayala factors, the bond factors, risk of flight is not risk of flight. It's significant risk of flight. It's significant danger to the community. It's significant risk of committing a new felony. It's a significant risk of intimidating witnesses. We put into evidence 3 affidavits: Matthew Albenzi, Ronnie Olson, and Diego Perez. All 3 of whom have had conversations with Travis McMichael, as Mr. Evans points out. They had conversations with him prior to February 23rd, and they had conversations with him after February 23rd. And not one of those conversations has been any kind of attempt to intimidate. In fact, as the affidavits say, they themselves swear there's been no attempt to intimidate them. But even better than that, Mr. Evans has a whole file, a stack of documents of interviews by the GBI. His evidence shows there's no attempt to intimidate by Travis McMichael. They've all been interviewed. Diego Perez has been interviewed probably twice. Matt Albenzi at least twice. By Glenn County, by GBI. None of them have said Travis McMichael tried to sway their testimony, intimidate them one way or another. It's ridiculous to play these jail calls or make insinuations that Travis McMichael is trying to obstruct justice. There's nothing about him in his background that is consistent with that argument. There's months and months of jail calls from Travis McMichael to his mother. There's no phone calls to Matt Albenzi, no phone calls to Diego Perez, no phone calls to Ronnie Olson or any other witness in this case with Travis saying you need to testify a certain way or don't testify. He's made a big deal about telling Lindsay to get off her phone and close her accounts. This poor girl, with whatever kind of judgment she lacks, takes a picture of the scene on February 23rd and posts it. It's not evidence. They have 1,000 pictures of that same scene, but it is incendiary, and there's no point to it. It just creates passion in the community. It infuriates people, as it should. It was a bad mistake by Lindsay. So rightfully, Travis wanted her to take it down. Doesn't help him to have that picture out there. It's not get rid of it. There's 1,000 pictures of the same site. It didn't hinder the investigation whatsoever. February 23rd is the date of the incident. He's not arrested until May 7th. There's not one piece of evidence presented to this court that in that time span, March, April, first week of May, Travis McMichael made plans to flee the jurisdiction of the court, talked to anybody about the possibility of fleeing the jurisdiction of the court, attempted to intimidate witnesses or obstruct justice, committed any new felonies, or posed any kind of danger in the community. He's never posed a danger before or after February 23rd, and I would submit to the court he didn't pose a danger on the 23rd. The danger came from Mr. Arbery. The court has mentioned, of course, several times, and we've gone over this preliminary hearing transcript. The problem with relying on a preliminary hearing transcript is the goal for the defense in a preliminary hearing is not the same, as we pointed out, as in a bond hearing. Agent Dial was not challenged for the accuracy of his testimony at the preliminary hearing. Quite the contrary, the questions posed to Agent Dial were open-ended questions, as the court recognized, designed to get discovery. There was not really a question of probable cause. And so when Agent Dial testifies that Ahmaud Arbery is a video game player, a jogger, an athlete, that doesn't go challenged. And so we don't want the court to think because it doesn't go challenged that it actually is the truth in the case. There are a number of instances in the transcript where Agent Dial is flat out wrong. And that is why we put some of these matters into evidence, not only to show that the preliminary hearing transcript is inaccurate as it relates to Agent Dial's testimony, but to show the court that this knothole the state wants the court to view the case through is incomplete. It's obviously too small a perspective. You need to knock down the fence and look at the whole case. And this is what the case is. And this goes to future dangerousness or risk of flight. You have, Your Honor, the Satilla Shores Facebook page. There's no question that the neighborhood was on edge, that there had been an uptick in property crimes dating back to 2018, certainly by 2019. Everybody's talking about it. Hey, there's been another break-in at the garage. There's been a theft of weapons out of cars, both in Satilla Shores and Royal Oaks, which is the next door neighborhood. I guess on the south side of Highway 17. Greg McMichael sees a man in July of 2019 that he thinks looks shady. He's living under the bridge. There's already property crimes. He's concerned that this man might be the guy who's causing a lot of these break-ins in the neighborhood. So what does he do? He calls the police, Glenn County Police Department. He doesn't pull his weapon on this man. In fact, the man is a white man who's homeless, who lives under the bridge. Officer Canego responds, and there's really nothing, no reason to suspect this man of anything. And nothing happens. Greg McMichael nor Travis caused any problems for this man. They just wanted the investigation to be done to make sure he's not responsible, because they